I know I usually post some random song that I put on the list for Songs for Infinite, but I thought for my 1000th video special, I should do a retrospective on what this whole channel is based around, and that is Super Smash Bros. Ultimate on the Nintendo Switch. So basically, the point of this video is that it's going to be me just ranting and raving about my all-time favorite video game, blah blah blah, you get the idea. So I'd just be randomly talking about things that I like about it and the things that tick me off, and you get the idea. So let's dive into the video. So let's kick this off with this history of Super Smash Bros. So the first Super Smash Bros. Game was released in 1999. The interesting thing with that is apparently the original Smash Bros. Wasn't originally going to have these super popular Nintendo characters such as Mario, Donkey Kong, Link, Samus, blah blah blah. It was originally going to be just another basic 3D fighting game that was going to have all original new characters, but somewhere along the line, someone probably Sakurai thought that it would be much better and easier to sell the game if it had characters people were familiar with. And bing bang boom, Smash ended up coming out how we know it today with all the classic Nintendo IP. Then, because of Super Smash Bros. Success, it led to an immediate sequel followed up no less than 2 years after the original, thus being Super Smash Bros. Melee on the GameCube. Now, for me personally, Melee is incredibly overrated, but that's only because of my own biased opinions. But I even have to acknowledge the fact that Melee was groundbreaking for the time. It added a bunch of new characters, the gameplay, fan base, and the overall competitive aspect of it is still incredibly popular and huge to this very day, like practically 25 years after its original release. And then it took 7 years before they finally made the trilogy, Super Smash Bros. Brawl on the Wii, and this game is one of my favorite Smash Bros. Games, and I personally prefer Brawl over Melee. Now, yes, I can acknowledge that the gameplay is very slow and kind of just clunky and, well, let's just say it's kind of a little bit of a mess, but I like it for the characters in Subspace Emissary because, I mean, who wouldn't like this epic crossover aspect? Brawl is just this underrated masterpiece, put it at that. And then about 6 years later, they finally followed it up with a quadrilogy, or the twin games, or the duos, or otherwise well better known as Super Smash Bros. For Nintendo 3DS and Wii U, or simply just Smash 4. Now this one's interesting because they're like twin games, but at the same time they're not twin games because they're not the same game, but then at the same time they are the same game. Just to put it simply, it's basically the same game just on two different consoles, but the difference is that one has more content than the other, and that's simply because the 3DS sucks and doesn't have that much content, but then again the Wii U is the flipping Wii U, so of course the 3DS one sold better. Let's just say Smash 4 is just Smash 4. It just exists. I don't know what they were trying to accomplish with this. Smash Wii U is literally the worst selling Smash Bros. Game of all time, and that's only because it was on the Wii U. It was just on a terrible system. And it's funny because now that I think about it, I think Smash 3DS actually sold better than Melee. I might be wrong. Hold on, let me Google this. Wow, I was right. 3DS did sell better than Melee. Well, guess that's something. I mean, I guess I would prefer to play 3DS over Melee. I mean, Smash 3DS was also the very first Smash game to have DLC. So that's the only thing Smash 4 has that's like worth mentioning. And now, enough of that. Let me just dive into the hype that led up to Smash Ultimate. After Smash 4, everyone was just kind of like, the series is just starting to turn into this basic, like, so predictable. Like, they add like maybe a couple new third-party characters, and everyone's like, yay, that's a cool new character. Oh, it's Cloud. Oh, it's Ryu. Oh, it's Bayonetta. Whatever. But it just got to the point that they were just oversaturating on the hip new Nintendo characters, which, not saying that they don't do that anymore, because they still do, because it seemed like they only were caring about what's new and modern, because looking back at every single Smash Bros. Game up to that point, they were clearly using it as a giant billboard ad to promote their new games on the system, which completely defeats the purpose of Super Smash Bros., because the whole point of Smash Bros. Is that it's supposed to be this big celebration of Nintendo's history, and it kind of defeats the purpose when you're just using it as a billboard ad to promote upcoming games. So at that point in time, a lot of people just didn't really have a whole lot of hope in in the next Smash Bros. Game to be like this groundbreaking thing, especially after Smash 4 just existing and not really serving a purpose other than just adding another game to the series and introducing DLC. So for a while, when they finally did announce that there was going to be a Smash Bros. On the Switch, and they announced that Inkling from Splatoon was going to be added into the game as one of the playable characters, and that Breath of the Wild Link was kind of obviously leaked in the trailer, everyone was assuming that the game was actually going to be pretty good. But everyone was still thinking about what the game is going to do to change, and how it's going to be different, and how it's going to be special, and how it could live up to the other past titles. And this is where the ground was set in motion. Everything was about to change in Super Smash Bros. History forever. Because then the E3 2018 trailer came out, and oh my goodness gracious, Great Balls of Fire. That trailer is probably one of the most famous video game trailers of all time because of how much it changed the video gaming world. The minute that the "everyone is here" popped on screen with Solid Snake coming back because he had previously been kicked out of Smash 4, it just changed everything. Because no fighting game in fighting game history, Street Fighter, Tekken, Streets of Rage, Virtua Fighter, Mortal Kombat, blah blah blah, literally every other fighting game in history had never done anything like that, bringing back literally every single fighter in the whole franchise's history. I mean, it seems like such a simple concept. It's still mind-boggling that it took Nintendo to be the company to do it, and of that it took like 30 years to do that. Like, what? Okay. So yeah, and then on top of that, they still groundbreakingly blew everyone's minds by bringing back all these characters that had been kicked out from previous games. And then that's how Super Smash Bros. Ultimate ended up turning into what it is now, the best-selling game in the franchise by a mile. I mean, good grief, the sales show it all. And it is definitely a game that won't be beaten in a very long time because it set the bar so dang high. So that is the history of how Smash Ultimate became Smash Ultimate. Okay, next thing I wanted to talk about is the music aspect of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, because my whole channel revolves around music, so it just makes sense that I should talk about this next. The entire franchise has revolved around bringing in these Nintendo franchises, so of course they were bringing in music from those franchises as well to play on the stages that you were fighting on. For instance, the Super Mario Brothers theme. The Legend of Zelda Overworld theme. Jungle Japes from Donkey Kong. Brinstar from Metroid. Green Greens from Kirby. Corneria from Star Fox. Even the main theme from Pokemon. These are just some examples of some of the many themes in Smash, but to dive back to where it all started, back when Smash Bros. First came out, it was on the 64, so of course the sound and audio sounded a very... how do I put this? Nintendo 64 audio from the 90s is just... it's aged pretty bad, let's put it at that, but it was a good introduction to the theming of the original Smash Bros. Because it wasn't too serious to begin with. It was just like a fun crossover with Nintendo's biggest IPs at the time. So of course it made sense to have to not put so much effort into the themes and music into the first game. It wasn't until Melee came out when they actually started completely turning around the franchise, and it wasn't just a joke anymore. It was starting to become more serious of a crossover by adding so many remixes of these themes from across all these different franchises, and some of them are just crazy in that aspect. But at the same time, they were still very old sounding, and the audio wasn't perfected, and it all sounds monotoned, and it doesn't have that surround sound feeling that all the other themes in the rest of the franchise have after Melee. It wasn't until Brawl came out when the franchise had another turnaround that ended up making the music even more better than it already was, because the original had that kind of cartoonish, kind of almost comes off as a joke vibe. Melee had this orchestral sound front that worked perfectly for the game, and it's a musical masterpiece. And then Brawl came out with this unexpected opera-driven main theme, but also at the same time had this kind of epic feeling to it. I don't know how to describe a feeling of epicness or something, and it fit perfectly with the Subspace Emissary, because the whole aspect is that they finally added a legitimate story mode to Smash Bros, and it made sense to have with this epic theme or whatever. And it's not just that, even the final boss theme is insanely good for the Wii standards. After Brawl was Smash 4 with its music, and its music was actually pretty good for being a very mediocre game. The main theme of 3DS and Wii U ended up being this heavy rock-driven theme, which I don't know if it makes sense because of how Smash 4 doesn't exactly have a theming. There is no theming with Smash 4. It's literally just 3DS and Wii U. I don't really see a theming there. So, in a sense, its theming doesn't really make any sense, but it's a good theme nonetheless. And then Ultimate came around the corner and introduced its main theme with Lifelight, and oh my goodness, Lifelight for Smash Ultimate. You don't even have to play the game, you don't even have to look at the front cover, you just hear this theme and you know, wow, this game is something else. This game is a game changer. This theme is insanely good just being from a Nintendo game, because I don't want to sound mean or anything, but Nintendo music compared to PlayStation or Square Enix or Capcom or Bandai Namco, Nintendo's never been able to truly compete with their music as much. I mean, good grief, even Sega's just makes Nintendo look like a disappointment in comparison, because Sega would always get these actual musicians and music artists to do their songs. I mean, Crush 40 just absolutely nailing it with so many classic Sonic hits. But then with Smash Ultimate, it's truly just knocking it clear out of the ballpark with the music. I mean, even some of the more obscure themes from Smash Ultimate. I mean, the Dark Realm theme. This theme is just hear it. What? What in the MCU was I just hearing? I mean, the music in Ultimate is just so much better than the rest of the whole franchise combined, because not only does it just bring back the majority, if not all, I'm not entirely sure, but all of the music from the past entries in the series, but it also adds a whole ton of new music that wasn't previously in games before it. So yeah, banger, 10 out of 10 soundtrack, and a story. Okay, I know I made it seem like Smash Ultimate is like the best dang game ever by now, but I guess I should start talking about something that's a little, I'm not exactly gonna say bad, but it's, okay, actually it's pretty bad. But the fan base for Smash Ultimate is like no other fan base ever because of its sheer amount of collaboration for all these random franchises for the most part. But the whole problem with the fan base is that because it brings together all of these people who have drastically different tastes in video games and drastically different tastes in types of video games, it's just, there's consistent arguing and ranting and like basically cussing people out all over the internet. So of course the Smash Bros fanbase can be pretty toxic. I mean, good grief, even all the way back since Brawl, people have been arguing, because Brawl is very controversial with the Melee fans hating it and the Brawl fans loving it, like, okay. So, for the last 20 years, the fanbase has been pretty 50-50 split on drastic different opinions. Like, there are some Smash purists who think that the third-party characters shouldn't even be in the game. You have the other whack job people who ask for the most bizarre characters ever who will never happen. And then you have the people who, those Melee elitists who think that their opinion is better than everyone else's just because they actually grew up with Melee. It's like, are you kidding me right now? Just because Melee is praised as one of the greatest games of all time doesn't mean your opinion's good. I mean, good grief, guys. Young Link and Pichu are literally two of the worst characters in the entire game. Anywho, fast forward all the way to Smash Ultimate, that's where the majority of the controversies start. Because every time there's a character that's announced that's coming to Smash, the arguments always spur on whether or not the character makes sense, whether or not the character was a good choice, and of course the people who were mad that their favorite character from their favorite video game wasn't announced. Of course those people are losers and everyone knows that, but I mean, you can't really blame them because like of course you're going to be a little disappointed when you like got your hopes up too high, but then at the same time it's like you don't have to be acting like a flippin' crybaby. Like, good grief, guys, it's just a video game at the end of the day. I mean, it's also not inherently the fans' fault, because Nintendo does make some pretty ballsy decisions, I will say. Like, oh my goodness, whose idea was it to put Piranha Plant in the game? No wonder the fan base is broken as heck. Like, if I pull up the top most requested characters since Sora was added, this list, it's... Okay, so this list is absolutely... I don't even know how to put it because of how stupid some of these character choices are and how stupid the ranking is. Like, it's based on votes. Like, there used to be this old Smash poll that you got to vote in your character for Smash, and Nintendo would probably consider putting them in the game. But at the end of the day, I think it was just Sakurai trying to troll everybody and seeing all the characters who made it at the very top of the list and saw that the majority of them were like either non-Japanese video game characters that would most likely never make it in Smash ever, or they were just stupid picks. Like, I guess you were just trying to see a joke or a meme make it into Smash. I mean, who in their right mind would want Sans from Undertale? I mean, he doesn't really do anything. Like, he's not even the main character. Like, that's clearly just for meme purposes. I know other people have asked for Jonesy from Fortnite, and it's like a Fortnite character in Smash. Are you kidding me right now? I shouldn't even have to talk about this, but this is just how ridiculous this list is. I mean, think about any character who's not already in Smash, and or just any character from across video game history. I'm talking all the way back to the flippin' 80s all the way through today. They're on this list. That's how many characters on this list. There's like 900 some odd characters. It's ridiculous. but the majority of the characters on this list are super obscure characters. I mean, some of them I've never even heard of. Like, who in the world is Sam and Max? I mean, some of this is just so ridiculous. I mean, like, how do you even know that, like... And it's like, I guess to be fair, I have some characters that I'd like in Smash 2 that are pretty obscure. I mean, for the most part, though, it's franchises that are already in Smash, just add-on characters. Like when they announced Kazuya, I was kind of a little bummed that it wasn't Jin Kazama, but other than that, like, it's just characters that would most likely make it in just because the franchise they're from is already in Smash with a playable character. Like, some of this is just, bro, you're reaching. I mean, think about it. It's like, it's not the fact that it is an obscure character, it's the fact that someone chose that over literally anything else. Like, why in the world would someone choose what I just said, Sam and Max, over Master Chief from Halo, Crash Bandicoot, Dante from Devil May Cry, Dr. Eggman, Knuckles, Shadow, Tails, all from Sonic? I mean, heck, even the Monster Hunter isn't even in Smash yet. There are some, like, obvious characters that, for me personally, I feel like I would be happy if they did put those super popular characters in. Like, I don't play Halo, I don't play Devil May Cry, but I know that both of those characters, Master Chief and Dante, would be really cool in the game because of their sheer popularity, and of course they have tons of rich video game history, so of course they'd have a lot to work with their movesets, whereas when you pick this like super obscure character that like no one's heard of and is literally only in from like one game, then of course you're not going to have much to work with, and because of them not being super recognizable, what's the point in adding them? I don't understand why Isaac from Golden Sun is so high on this list. Like, he's literally only from 3 games, and the only reason I know that is because I was Googling him when I first saw him in Smash. I'm like, who's this blonde-haired anime kid? Googled it, found out he's from like 3 games, one of which is like, didn't sell that well, like, at all, and 2 of them are from the Game Boy Advance 20 years ago. Like, it's like, was this game really that popular, or are people literally only asking for him because he was put in as an assist trophy? Like, I swear to goodness, some of these characters, like, every single assist trophy in Smash, and I mean every single one, is literally on this list, for the most part. I think there might be a couple there's like people are like not stupid enough to ask for, but then again, this list is full of stupid characters, it's not even funny. I mean, it's... I just can't. Some of these characters are like the Penguin from Club Penguin. Are you kidding me right now? I mean, some of these are pretty cool. I mean, like Sly Cooper. I've never played that, but I've heard of it, and I was like, yeah, old school PlayStation character. That'd be cool. But then you have a couple other characters in here where it's like, who, or like, why? And that's just the people asking for characters. You never believe the amount of hate that Steve got, and it's actually pure stupidity, honestly. The only reason people are hating on Steve is because people who are inherently kind of good at Steve end up beating everybody 9 times out of 10 in basically any Smash Ultimate match, but that's not a good reason to be hating on the character. I mean, I get it. I guess he's kind of broken, but like, I don't play as Steve. He's literally not one of my mains, so I guess I have a viable opinion on this because I don't really see the issue. It's like if you suck at fighting against Steve, I guess that's just a skill issue. Like, that's not actually the person. It's not because Steve's broken, because bro, Steve's not the number 1 broken character in Smash right now. At least that's what I'd say. I feel like there are far more worse characters in Smash Ultimate. I mean, good grief. The sheer amount of characters that have broken abilities is pretty much the entire roster. So to make an argument about which character is the most broken is actually stupid. Because, let's be honest, the entire game itself is broken, but that's what makes it so good, is that pretty much every character, for the most part, is somewhat balanced. Some are a little more powerful than others, but every single one, for the most part, has some kind of move that makes them broken in a good or bad way. But yeah, so the fan base, it's just embarrassing. So it's just bad. It's just bad. I just want to move on. Now, one major aspect of Smash is the stages, because this game, unlike many other fighting games, has more stages than fighters, which is interesting because most of the time there's usually only like, say there's like 20 fighters, there's only like 10 stages. Here it's the complete opposite. With over 80 characters on the roster, there's actually over 100 stages in Smash Ultimate. And while the amount of stages is actually really good just as a whole, if you dive in deeper, it's kind of pathetic, honestly, because some of the stages are really good, but others not so much. The amount of Mario stages that are in Smash is absurd, and of those Mario stages, it's like the same stage multiple times for some reason, and some stages are just very not necessary. And what I mean by that is, I like it when the stages are literally specific areas ripped straight from the game they're from, and not just Smash Original, because I don't know why they keep doing this throughout the whole franchise. They keep making these like Smash Original stages when they literally have material to work with. For instance, take Mario 64. For some reason, they only have 2 stages, and they're both like either very loosely or just completely Smash Original. They're both very loosely referencing the game Mario 64, but for the most part, pretty much Smash Original. It's not just the Mario stages either. There are tons of other stages in the game that are pretty much Smash Original, and I hate it when they do that because, like, why? It's not necessary. And it's not just Smash Original stages either. When you're on a stage selection screen and you hover over a specific stage, it will say the name on the bottom of it. It will have the logo of the franchise next to the name, and then it will have the logo of the game it's from up in the top right-hand corner. Now, for some reason, some of the stages just say the franchise and not the specific game, even though it's very obviously from whatever it's from. Take Hyrule Castle, for example. This stage just has the logo The Legend of Zelda in the corner, even though it's very obviously ripped from Ocarina of Time, so I don't know why they couldn't just put the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time logo in the corner. I know this is just a small nitpick, but like, why? The same thing goes for the Mario 64 one. It literally just says Super Mario in the corner when it should say Super Mario 64. I mean, I guess it's okay since it is technically Smash Original, but it's based off 64, so And then Star Fox, oh my gosh. I love Star Fox so much, so the fact that I'm about to be trashing on the stages is kind of heartbreaking, but there's only 3 Star Fox stages in the game, and all 3 of them just say Star Fox in the corner, even though all 3 of them are so obviously based off of a specific game, or at least a mix of specific games. The Corneria stage debuted back in Melee, and it was actually based off Star Fox 64 for like the majority of every single game it's been in, until they updated it in Ultimate, where it's kind of loosely based off Star Fox Zero. Actually, screw that. It's actually based off Star Fox Zero. I don't know why they couldn't just put that logo in the corner. And then there's Venom, which is so obviously based off Star Fox 64. It's, why are you just putting the Star Fox logo in the corner? Like, come on, guys. And then there's the Lilac Cruise, which this one you could actually argue that just putting the logo of just the franchise as a whole makes sense, because this one actually isn't really based off a specific game, but it most resembles the very first mission in Star Fox Assault, which that reminds me into what I'm about to go into next. Now, unlike Fighters, where everyone is here, everyone has come back, yay! There's a bunch of stages that actually did not return for multiple reasons. I mean, there are some stages that were just pretty much the exact same stage, just slightly different, so they just got rid of it because it wasn't necessary. But there are a ton of stages throughout Smash history that probably are really cool and could have probably been in Ultimate. I just don't know why they didn't bring them back. I mean, take Super Smash Bros. For Wii U. Remember the game I called It Just Exists? Well, it does have some pretty cool stages, I will say. And there's 2 specifically that, honestly, I don't understand why they didn't bring them back, because they were so, like, they put a lot of effort into them just for them to only be in one game. Like, are you kidding me? and that is the Donkey Kong stage and the Star Fox Assault stage. Now, the reasons for both of these not returning, one has a better reason than the other, but the Donkey Kong stage had this interesting gimmick where you would be able to actually fight in the background and the foreground using the barrels, but the problem is that wouldn't work with Stage Morph, which was added in Smash Ultimate, where you could literally change stages mid-battle, so that obviously wouldn't exactly work, but I feel like you could have programmed it into the stage where, like, if you were in the background, it just forced you into the foreground wherever you were. I feel like that's the most obvious thing to do, so it's, like, such a cool stage, and they lost it for, like, honestly kind of a lame gimmick to begin with, and it's, like, really? So that's one stage that didn't return that really should have, and then the other stage is the Star Fox Assault stage, and that one, they dub it as for the same reason, but it's almost exactly like the Pilot Wings stage, so it's kind of stupid that they got rid of the Star Fox Assault stage but kept the Pilot Wings stage, and they dubbed it as like not being able to work with Stage Morph, even though Pilot Wings works just fine with Stage Morph. But anyway, the Star Fox Assault stage was, and I just mentioned before how the Star Fox stages are just not that good. Like, this Star Fox Assault stage was actually a game specific stage that was ripped straight from the game it's from, and that actually was really good, whereas all these other Star Fox stages either Smash original or just kind of boring, you know? Like, this one had like a flipping space battle. It's really cool. Like, I don't know why they got rid of it and came up with a silly excuse that wouldn't work with Stage Morph. It makes no sense. And then there's actually one from Smash 3DS that actually should have returned, and that is the Pac-Man maze. How and why would you get rid of the Pac-Man maze? It's literally one of the most iconic places or stages or whatever you call it in video game history. Like, everyone knows that Pac-Man maze because it's Pac-Man. I mean, come on. We do still have a Pac-Man stage in Smash, but it's from Pac-Land, and not everybody really knows that. Like, Pac-Man's literally Pac-Man. Like, it's just like Looney Tunes. Everybody knows Bugs Bunny. Everyone knows Mickey Mouse. Everybody knows Batman. Everyone knows, like, that's what Pac-Man is. It's so famous, it makes no sense to get rid of that stage. And then this is where it gets really stupid. They got rid of the Pac-Man stage, they got rid of the Star Fox Assault stage, and they got rid of that Donkey Kong stage for Electroplankton. Are you kidding me right now? I am still mind-boggling to this day on why they kept Electroplankton in the game, but not those other three I just mentioned. The Donkey Kong one is the only one I could viably give it a pass because of the weird gimmick it had that wouldn't technically work with Stage Morph, but the other two, it's like unacceptable practically. Why would we lose Pac-Man Maze to Electroplankton? I need answers, Nintendo. I need answers. This makes no sense. With that rant aside, let's start with actually talking about some stages that are actually really cool, because, like, honestly, a lot of the best stages in Smash Bros. Are a lot of the third-party stages, probably because that's just how Nintendo works. They go to all that effort to get the contract with those third-party companies, so they're not going to screw around with messing up, making the stages super boring or super lame for the most part. Like, for example, some stages like Midgar from Final Fantasy VII, or the Minecraft stage from Minecraft, Dr. Wily's Castle from Mega Man 2, Shadow Moses Island from Metal Gear Solid, or heck, even the Mishima Dojo from Tekken is pretty interesting. They put all this effort into these third-party stages, and it's like, why can't Nintendo just do that with their own first-party Nintendo franchises? Because, like, some of these stages are really cool. It just kind of sucks that some of the Nintendo ones are kind of lame, because, like, take Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, for example. Breath of the Wild is literally the biggest Zelda game, not just Zelda game, but one of the biggest action adventures, I don't know, would you consider it an RPG, games of all time. So it feels like it should have had such a way, like a super cool stage, but it just got one of the Sheikah Towers, and that's okay, like it works and makes sense as a stage, but it's kind of a boring stage. Like, there's not much going on. You look at the Midgar one, and you'll have like the summon materia pop up every now and then, and you literally can grab it and get some of the summons to appear in the background and cause pure chaos on the stage. The Minecraft stage, literally, it's a different stage almost every time you play it, because it puts you in like a different biome every time. I just mentioned with the Pilot Wings stage earlier, like, you're literally on a plane, so the stage is quite literally moving, and it will drop you on a different plane every now and then. And then there's the Legend of Zelda Spirit Tracks where you're on a train, and then there's a Legend of Zelda Wind Waker where you're on a boat. and then there's all the Star Fox stages where you're on a spaceship at the very least. Some of these stages are so cool, and then you have the Breath of the Wild one. Literally, the stage is supposed to be for one of the biggest games of all time, and it's quite literally just a platform above a bigger platform. Like, it's kind of lame. I wish they could have made something better. I don't know what they would have done, but that's just one of them. I mean, so yeah, the stages as a whole is like pretty split 50-50, where it's like some of them are really good, some of them are really bad. There's that one stage that ticks you off and it makes you wonder why the heck it's even in the game, and some other stages didn't return. But for the most part, the stages pass. It's passable. The stage roster is amazing. Oh yeah, and I almost forgot. Where in the world is Rainbow Road? They got rid of Rainbow Road? Are you kidding me? It's Rainbow Road. It's literally the most famous Mario Kart track of all time. Where is Rainbow Road? It's Rainbow Road! For crying out loud. The next thing I'm going to talk about is the representation in Smash Ultimate. The representation is interesting. While all franchises, you want them to be represented a lot, right? Well, no, because some franchises just don't have a lot to work with, and or don't deserve to have that much to work with, if you know what I mean. Like, take Duck Hunt, for example. Duck Hunt is a super small, like, one game from the NES. Even though it's super popular from the NES, it's one game, so it shouldn't have more than one stage, it shouldn't have more than one character playable. You get the picture. So, I'm going to talk about the good and bad representations for franchises in Smash. Let's start off with the good ones. So, good ones would be, well, okay, I'll put Mario and Zelda aside for now because, well, I'll talk about it later. Let's take Kirby, for example. Kirby is a really good represented franchise because it represents a lot of the games throughout the entire franchise's history. Because they have a decent amount of Kirby stages ranging from many different Kirby games. They have 3 characters in the game, Kirby, Meta Knight, and King Dedede, which is a good variety of the main character and then 2 villains. Pretty decent selection, and then a wide variety of spirits, blah blah blah. That's good representation. Another good represented franchise would be Pokemon. And the reason I say that is because there's 8 Pokemon characters playable in Smash Ultimate, which makes it literally tied for second place with the most playable fighters in any franchise in Smash history. And there's 7 Pokemon stages, which puts it up there with having a lot of stages compared to other franchises. Like, some literally only have 1 stage. So 7 is a lot. And it's Pokemon. I mean, it's Pokemon, for crying out loud. It makes sense to have a lot of representation. It's Pokemon. I mean, it's literally one of the biggest media franchises in not just video game, but pop culture history. It has its anime, it has its video games, it has its card games, even has movies. I mean, this franchise is big enough to compete with Marvel, DC, Mickey Mouse, Looney Tunes, Minecraft, like the biggest media franchises in media history. It's just up there. So that is good representation. And now let me talk about a third-party good representation. I'm not going to talk about third-party franchises with representation as much because you have to add in the factor of getting the contract with this third-party company. So obviously there's going to be a couple like rules and regulations that Nintendo has to follow because the company basically is still telling them, we own this character. We basically get to tell you how you get to use this character and or IP. So I'm not going to talk about third-party franchises that much, but I will talk about Final Fantasy because I have to acknowledge that while Final Fantasy is not represented good at all as a whole, because 7 is literally the only game represented for the most part, Final Fantasy 7 specifically, I will say they did a phenomenal job representing it in Smash Ultimate. It's interesting because before they added Sephiroth as DLC, Final Fantasy 7 used to be one of the worst represented third-party franchises in all of Smash because it was literally just Cloud, his 2 fighter spirits, which was just 2 different versions of Cloud, 1 stage, and 2 music tracks. That's literally it. Whereas when they added Sephiroth, they added obviously the other fighter spirits spirit of Sephiroth. And then they added a bunch of other Final Fantasy VII characters as spirits. They added a couple Mii outfits for the Mii Brawler, the Mii Gunner, and the Mii Sword Fighter. And then they added another stage, and they actually added a bunch more music, including some Smash remixes. So they fixed the representation so much that it instantly became one of, if not the best represented third-party franchise in all of Smash, because it is one of only 3 third-party franchises that has more than one character playable, and the only other 2 would be Castlevania and Street Fighter. And therefore, because Street Fighter only has Ryu and Ken, and Castlevania only has Simon Belmont and Richter Belmont, Final Fantasy gets Cloud and Sephiroth. So therefore, Sephiroth is legitimately one of the only playable third-party villains in Smash, unless you want to count Kazuya Mishima from Tekken. It gets iffy with Tekken because of how Kazuya is sometimes the main character and then he's the main villain, blah blah blah. Okay, it's a complicated franchise, whatever. So not counting Tekken, Sephiroth is quite literally the only true villain-esque character that's not Nintendo on the roster. Final Fantasy VII specifically, phenomenal job on Nintendo's side and Sakurai's side. Moving on to bad representation. This is where things are going to start coming off as me just being a nitpicky a-hole. But once I dive into it, you'll understand my complaints. I mentioned earlier about how I'm not happy with Star Fox stages in Smash, and it's not just the stages for Star Fox. The whole franchise is just represented so poorly, it kind of hurts, honestly, as a Star Fox fan. I know the franchise history. I know which games are more popular than others. I know which games bombed so badly and which ones are literally praised as some of the greatest games in the series, yada yada yada. But like, the representation of Star Fox is mind-boggling for how bad it is. I mean, I don't even understand how this was even passed in the game. So remember earlier when I was talking about how the stages are like where they're clearly based off Star Fox 64, but they don't have the Star Fox 64 logo in the corner. Instead they just say Star Fox. Well, it's the complete other way around, where they're trying to take the characters and their color swaps. See, wasn't really talking about color swaps earlier because I'm going to talk about that later in the video, but the main default outfit for pretty much all 3 of them, well, actually no, come to think of it, Falco is actually pretty much ripped straight from Star Fox Zero. Fox and Wolf are both completely, like, their design in Ultimate is completely made up for the most part, where it's only loosely resembling what they dub as being from Star Fox Zero, even though it's not. I literally will show you a PNG image of the Star Fox Zero version of Fox and put it next to the Smash Ultimate version of Fox, and you can very obviously tell that's not the same Fox. And the sad part is that, to put it in perspective, this version of Fox does not exist at all in the entirety of Star Fox. It literally is Smash Original 100%, because it's like he's wearing the jacket from Star Fox Zero, he still has the head design from Star Fox Command, and then he has these made-up boots that are literally not from any Star Fox game. I know this sounds super nitpicky, but like, it's irritating, okay? I mean, ugh. And the reason why it doesn't make sense is, like, why do they just, like, make stuff up for franchises like Star Fox when they do it such a phenomenal job of taking characters straight out of the game they're from and make them look exactly like the character? I mean, how hard would it have been if they just plopped Fox straight out of Star Fox Assault and put him in Brawl? That's all I'm asking for. Because back in Melee, they just basically made a more HD version of Star Fox 64 Fox, because that was really the newest Star Fox game at the time, so that's all that made sense at the time. But for some reason, even though over the course of 7 years, 3 Star Fox games had been released in between Melee and Brawl. So those would include Star Fox Adventures, Star Fox Assault, and Star Fox Command. Now, for some reason, instead of just going all out with the Star Fox Command design, they felt it necessary to, like, make up this new design that doesn't exist. I don't know why they did that. I mean, I don't even know why they went out with even representing Command at all. Because at that point in time, Brawl came out around 2 years after Star Fox Command came out. And Command is legitimately ranked as the 2nd worst game in the entire series. So representing it at all almost feels not necessary, because no one's gonna care. And I'm not gonna go into why it's ranked as one of the 2nd worst games in the series, because, like, I don't want to. And I will honestly just do that in a different video, like if I make a Star Fox retrospective or something. But I don't know why they couldn't just, like, because Star Fox Assault is kind of looked over because of the fact that it just sold kind of mediocrely. But that was the game game right before Command, so I feel like that should have been the obvious choice, especially since the secret Star Fox conversations that you can literally have on the stage are all loosely based off Star Fox Assault. So it's weird that they just didn't go all out with the Star Fox Assault. And like I mentioned it earlier with the Star Fox Assault stage, which was literally based on the one game that wasn't 64, and then they got rid of it. So all 3 stages are all from Star Fox 64, well, one's a 64 stage that was updated to Star Fox Zero, which Star Fox Zero is the worst selling game in the whole entire franchise. To put things in retrospective, Star Fox Zero did way worse than Sonic the Hedgehog 2006, and everyone knows that game. Oh, that game, dude. Oh my gosh, no one wants to talk about that game. Those graphics, whatever. But Star Fox Zero, I get it. It was the newest game in the series, and they had nothing else to work with, so I get representing it. But, like, the fact that they don't represent Star Fox Adventures, like, really at all, like, I get it, okay, Star Fox Adventures is a little bit of a cringy game, but that's only because it was made by, honestly, a little bit of a cringy video game developer. I mean, Rare has not exactly made some 100% wholesome games, I mean, let's be honest. So, its representation shouldn't be tarnished just because of that. The fact that Star Fox Adventures is, like, literally probably one of the least represented games that should be represented in Smash is crazy. I mean, all it has is Crystal as an assist trophy, literally 2 spirits, one of which is also Crystal, coincidentally enough, and then that's it. Like, no stage, no music, no color swaps. It's like they're trying to pretend this game doesn't exist. Oh, okay, Nintendo, I see what you're doing there. And don't get me wrong, I don't love Star Fox Adventures. It's honestly a mediocre game in my opinion. Like, if I were to rank it on a tier list, I think I'd give it like a C+, maybe a solid B. Maybe. Because I love Star Fox Assault. That game is legitimately one of my all-time favorite games ever made. Star Fox Adventures, on the other hand, it's just but, like, that doesn't mean you shouldn't represent it. I feel like it should have gotten Krazoa Palace as a stage, it should have gotten a decent selection of music, and it should have gotten a little more spirits. And it's not just that, I mean, even the roster of characters for Star Fox is kind of silly, because, like, Fox and Falco makes sense. Adding all 4 of them would be cool, but it wouldn't really make a whole lot of sense because of the fact that there's not a whole lot of stuff to work with moveset-wise, because Star Fox is heavily based on the R-Wing on-rail shooter game aspect of it, so you don't really have much to work with. Unless you go the Star Fox Assault route, where Nintendo literally just pretended that stuff didn't exist. I mean, could you imagine if they gave Fox the assault rifle, or like the machine gun, or the Gatling gun, or even flipping grenades from Star Fox Assault? Can you imagine how flipping badass that would have been? I mean, come on. And it would have made his moveset more interesting than whatever this made-up stuff is. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love his moveset, but, like, it's made up, it's not... half of his moveset's completely made up, and some of it is just filler in making sense for the character, like his blaster gun. Like, his whole moveset just is just made up, therefore he's like a whole new character. There's Star Fox, Fox McCloud, and then there's Super Smash Bros. Fox McCloud. And that's just the moveset aspect of it. The actual fighters, what I was referring to just a little bit ago. We have Fox, Falco, and Wolf. Now, here's an interesting short little history. Wolf was never supposed to be included in Smash Brawl. They added him because they were rushing the game out towards the end of its development. That's why Wolf, Toon Link, and Jigglypuff were not even in the Subspace Emissary storyline. They were literally shoehorned in as like these bonus characters to get, and it's kind of obvious to tell that they were rushed because Jigglypuff was just bringing back a character that was already in a previous game. Super easy to make. Toon Link is basically a copy and paste of Young Link, so he basically has the exact same moveset. You're seeing a repetition here. And then Wolf, they just added him in as a slower, more powerful version of Fox. I don't like playing as Wolf. Honestly, his moveset kind of sucks in my opinion. And it's because of that. I mean, they have 3 Star Fox characters in Smash, and they all have the exact same moveset practically. I don't even understand why they won't consider Falco as an Echo Fighter over Fox. They're literally almost the exact same character. It's like Ryu and Ken. They have almost the same moveset, but it's slightly tweaked to where they're different characters. Ryu and Ken, Echo Fighters. Falco and Fox, nope. What? And where I was getting with this, Wolf was never intended to be in Brawl. It was originally supposed to be Crystal, and honestly, I feel like it would have been a little more interesting because maybe she would have had more moveset potential than just copy and pasting Fox's moveset. She could have got her staff, and maybe she could have incorporated the Star Fox Assault artillery, so that way they could still keep Fox's old moveset, but still introducing the Star Fox Assault artillery in there. But no, they never did. They scrapped Crystal with Wolf, and then immediately kicked Wolf himself out in Smash 4. Like, are you kidding me? And then they brought him back in Ultimate, and then that's it. Like, I don't know. Star Fox is a tricky franchise, so after this whole rant, Star Fox gets like a D tier for representation. Maybe a solid C minus, but like the representation is just bad, and that's coming from a hardcore Star Fox fan. So, Nintendo, do better. Do better. Next on this rant for bad representation would be Fire Emblem, except this is for the complete opposite reason than you're thinking. Fire Emblem, what do you mean? It has 8 playable characters, 4 stages, tons of spirits, tons of assist trophies. Okay, maybe only like 2 assist trophies, but like, that's what I'm getting at. Fire Emblem is such a niche franchise, it's just like Star Fox, or at least it's like what Star Fox used to be. They're both niche franchises. And what I mean by that is, like, they're popular enough to be acknowledged and to be talked about as, like, franchises that are, like, put their spot on video gaming history, but not to the point where, like, you can ask some random schmuck off the street, have you heard of Fire Emblem? And they're gonna be like, oh, yes, I have. Like, if you ask a 40-year-old man, have you played Fire Emblem? He's probably gonna say no, because like, even I had never heard of Fire Emblem before I started playing Smash. Whereas if you were to ask someone younger, like a 15-year-old, the person would probably say yes. It's just the times. That's what I mean. Like, so Fire Emblem, the only reason it's quote-unquote represented badly is because it's represented too much. Like, it's almost so obvious that Sakurai is obsessed with the franchise, which is kind of funny because it's not even his franchise. He's the creator of flipping Kirby, so it's kind of funny that he's, like, more obsessed with putting Fire Emblem characters in Smash and not Kirby characters. Because I feel like it would have made more sense if there was like 8 Kirby characters, a ridiculous amount of Kirby stages, a ridiculous amount of Kirby everything. Because then it'd just be like, oh, he's just playing favorites. Here, it's kind of funny. It is. Don't get me wrong. I don't hate that Fire Emblem's represented. It's just the fact that it's represented so much, and that every single character is almost like the exact same character, just slightly tweaked. I mean, you have Marth, you have Girl Marth, you have Strong Slow Marth, you have Marth 2, and then you have Marth 2 but clone, and it's just like, what? I mean, Robin, Corrin, and Byleth are quite literally the only 3 who are not just another variation of Marth. Byleth, even though so many people are complaining over Byleth's inclusion, it's like, yes, Byleth being the 8th Fire Emblem character, yes, I said 8th. Remember I said Pokemon has 8 characters? That's basically saying Fire Emblem deserves the same amount of playable characters as Pokemon. Are you kidding me right now? Comparing Fire Emblem to Pokemon? The only other franchise in Smash Ultimate that deserves the amount of recognition as Pokemon is probably Mario. I think that's pretty much it. And maybe Sonic, but Sonic gets disqualified because it's not Nintendo. But anyway, moving on. So after they added Byleth, people were complaining about like, oh, it's another Fire Emblem character, and it's like, Byleth is actually a pretty solid character. He's pretty cool. I mean, he has this pretty decent moveset that's different from the other Fire Emblem characters. It's just the only problem is that he is the 8th Fire Emblem character. Like, if there was only Marth, Rom, and maybe Corrin, and then they just added Byleth, I don't think anyone would really care, because that's why this whole bad representation of Fire Emblem, and you just the cliche memes I see on the internet about people just completely erasing Fire Emblem from the game. It's like, no, I'm fine with Fire Emblem in the game. It's just, it's represented too much, and I think it's something that just, I hope they fix in the next game. I don't know. It's like, because now you're just gonna have to take characters away, and everyone hates it when that happens. Let's be honest. Some of these characters really, to put it in perspective, the game that Roy is originally from is literally not even that popular at all. They literally added Roy in the game before his game even came out. I mean, are you kidding me right now? How does that make any sense to add a character in from a game that hasn't even come out yet, when the whole purpose of Smash is to be celebrating the greatest video games of all time for Nintendo? Now, that makes no sense. So, like, that's what I'm talking about. So, Fire Emblem, in the sense of representing the franchise by itself, they did a phenomenal job. They knocked it out of the ballpark. This franchise is represented insane. It's insane. However, it's bad because it doesn't make sense compared to the other franchises in the game. So, moving on. And now we come to the final bad and probably most notoriously bad represented franchise in Smash history, which is not even Nintendo. And I mentioned it earlier, and that is Sonic the Hedgehog. Sonic has been in it since Brawl, and by process of elimination, because Solid Snake was kicked out in Smash 4, Sonic is the only third-party character to be in 3 technically 4 Smash Bros. Games. So you'd think he should have the best representation for third-party franchises, right? No. Absolutely not. He has the worst representation for any third-party franchise. And honestly, it's probably because Nintendo still has a thing against Sega. They've had a feud since the 90s. Not even, since the 80s. I mean, it's Universal versus Disney. It's McDonald's versus Burger King. It's Lego versus Mega Bloks. It's Marvel versus DC. It's one of the most famous feuds in pop culture history. So I guess it makes sense in the way that they're basically trashing on Sega, but like at that point, why get the contract with Sega? Just to prove that you're buddy-buddy with your enemies, but at the same time, you're still enemies? Think about it. Sonic the Hedgehog, right? Literally one of the biggest media franchises of all time. Up there with Pokemon, for example. And comparing it with Pokemon is quite sad. I mean, Sonic the Hedgehog literally only has one playable character, and that is Sonic. 2 stages, one of which is from literally one of the most randomest games they could have ever picked, and it was only added just to promote the game on the Wii U. Kind of pathetic. And a decent amount of music selection. I am kind of glad they got some of that Crush 40 hard rock music in there. That is something I wasn't exactly expecting they'd add. I'm glad they have it in there, but they did the bare minimum with the music. Like, they don't even have I Am All of Me from Shadow the Hedgehog. Like, are you guys kidding me right now? That's literally one of the most famous Sonic themes of all time. How is that not in Smash Ultimate? So the music, at least they did the bare minimum and didn't just do below the bare minimum. The stage representation's just bad. I mean, why Windy Hill Zone? Why am I even looking at this stage? Really? It's not something from Sonic Adventure 2 or something from like Sonic and the Secret Rings or Sonic and the Black Knight, or heck, even Sonic Forces would have made more sense than this. Like, really? And it's not just that either. I mean, the Spirits, they also did the bare minimum. They only added like all the main characters from every game. They didn't end up really bothering adding like any really side obscure characters, because like they've added some pretty obscure characters as Spirits before. It's kind of funny that they have like no side obscure Sonic characters, if you know what I mean. But yeah, it's rough. How in the world do we only have Sonic in Smash as just Sonic? Like, how did 3 other third-party franchises beat Sonic the Hedgehog? How did Castlevania be the first one to get 2 characters and it was just introduced in Ultimate? Sonic the Hedgehog should have been the first third-party franchise to get 2 playable characters. I mean, come on, where is Tails? Where is Dr. Eggman? How in the world do we have Sephiroth before Eggman? Are you kidding me? Eggman is up there with Bowser. Like, everybody should know this dude. Like, this is literally one of the most famous bad guys in video game history. I mean, come on. I know people keep begging for Shadow, but that's just gonna bring up the same issue that I mentioned earlier with Star Fox. It's just gonna be a big ol' Echo Fighter clone character of Sonic, and it's like, that should not be the second character they add, especially for the sense that, like, that's basically the same thing if Sega were to have their own Smash Bros, and then they add Mario, and the next character they add is Wario. Like, it doesn't make sense. The next character from Sonic should be either Tails or Eggman. End of story. And now I saved Mario and Zelda for last because they are both the only 2 franchises that are both phenomenally excellent, great, awesome representation, but also terrible representation at the same time. And that's because while they both represent pretty much the entire franchise's history, and yes, that's talking about like over 100 plus Mario games and over 30 Zelda games, that's a lot. That is a lot of representation just by the amount of games represented. Now, this is where things get interesting. So with Mario, let me dive in deeper. I don't want to talk about the music. The music is represented just great. Okay, except one thing. Where is Bowie Base Galaxy? Where is Bowie Base Galaxy, guys? Where is the Mario Galaxy Bowie Base Galaxy theme? This is literally the best Mario theme ever made. Why is it not in the game? Okay, other than that, the music is phenomenal for Mario. The stages could use some work, honestly, because like some of them are just the exact same thing again. And what I mean by that is like World 1-1 from various different Mario games. Like, some of these stages, they're alright, just some of them are pretty boring, and honestly some of them just are not necessary. And then the roster. How in the world did we get Piranha Plant before Toad? Notice how I said Toad and not Waluigi. I am totally fine if Waluigi makes it in. If he doesn't, whatever. I feel like he should be in there, because honestly for me, when I started playing Smash and I found out Wario made it in, I'm like, ooh, where's Waluigi? Because I never knew there was like a Wario franchise. I only knew Wario as like this evil, weird, twisted version of Mario, and then they had Waluigi in there with him, so it was like this evil, twisted version of Luigi, so it just makes sense that they'd be together. I always saw Wario and Waluigi as like this duo, just like Mario and Luigi. So when they only added Wario and not Waluigi, for me when I was younger, it just came off as a little weird to me. Now that I found out that Waluigi just doesn't have his own series and Wario does, I guess it kind of does make sense that they added Wario, not Waluigi. But in my younger self, it just came off as a little weird. And because of the memes of Waluigi not being in Smash, and like the people keep begging for him to be in the game, and then just for Sakurai to add in the Piranha Plant, like, are you kidding me right now? That is so obviously a middle finger to the Waluigi fans. It's not even funny. It's just mean at that point. Like, really, literally any, like, so I think the Goomba would have been a better choice than that. I mean, you gotta be kidding me right now. The Piranha Plant, the Piranha Plant. Let me say that again. The Piranha Plant. Okay. I'll stop. I gotta move on, because, like, you can tell where this is going. Zelda's not as bad. There's really no music that I would say is arguably missing. Breath of the Wild is really the only problem with, like, music and stage-wise. I mentioned earlier with the stage, so I don't have to talk about it. But the music, they kind of skimped out on Breath of the Wild. I mean, to be fair, Breath of the Wild doesn't even really have that much music to choose from. But, like, the Lost Woods theme would have been really nice. And, like, maybe all the other Champions themes. So, and I know that's just a little nitpicky, so that's all. The main issue with Zelda is the roster of characters. 3 Links, 2 Zeldas, and a Ganondorf and a pear tree. Of Zelda's mass amount of history, Zelda's mass amount of characters, Zelda's mass amount of possibility, and you pick 3 Links, 2 Zeldas, and Ganondorf. Okay, Nintendo. There's a reason why they did that, because the problem with The Legend of Zelda is it's similar like Final Fantasy, where like every game is different, except they have a different story with different plot or whatever. Just the only difference is that they always use Zelda, Link, and some form of Ganondorf, or whatever he's called, which is an issue, because that means a lot of the side characters sometimes don't return. So some of these characters who are legitimately main characters are only main characters in one game. So how can they choose just one character who's from one Zelda game? So you're gonna have the Ocarina of Time fans begging for like the various amount of, what were they called, champions from Ocarina of Time. You're gonna have the Wind Waker fans begging for Tetra. You're gonna have the Twilight Princess fans begging for Midna. You're gonna have the Skyward Sword fans begging for either Girahim or, oh my gosh, the memes might bring Groose into Smash. Or the Breath of the Wild fans who want the champions in there. Which I kind of want the champions, honestly, because I feel like, because Breath of the Wild is the best-selling Zelda game by a mile, I feel like it makes sense for Breath of the Wild to get characters in there, because why not? Especially since they have moveset potential from Hyrule Warriors. So it begs that question, because Zelda has such a split fan base between like 6 different games, you can't really choose like one character, because at that point Zelda's gonna have like 12 characters in Smash if you appease everybody. And that's the problem with Smash Ultimate. You can't make everybody happy. Literally every time someone's added to the game, someone's just going to throw a temper tantrum on the internet because their favorite character didn't make it in the game. That's just how it is. I just trashed on the fan base earlier. This is literally the Smash Bros. Community. Sorry, that's just the way it is. The Zelda representation, dude. It's tricky, okay? So, representation for Smash. I'm going to give it a ranking. Let's see here. Some really good representation, some really bad representation. Let's meet in the middle, call it a good, solid B. Right? Would you say that's a B? I'd say that's a B. Representation is a solid B. Okay, moving on. And now we have finally gotten to what would probably be dubbed as the most important aspect of the video, which is the roster of Smash Ultimate. Now, the roster is the most controversial thing in pop culture history. And now, I am selling the prize for the most controversial thing to have ever existed. And the bid starts at 500. Do I hear 500? Going once. 500. Oh, I hear in the back, 500 by Nickelback. 600. Anybody else? 600 by The Door from Titanic. Anyone else? 1,000 by Star Fox Adventures. Going once. Going twice. Oh, I hear another one. 1,500 by the roster of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Going once. Going twice. Sold to the roster of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. I guarantee you people are probably watching this video thinking about, oh, what's this guy's opinions on the roster, since he apparently likes trashing on certain things and raving about other things. So yes, I am finally getting around to the roster. Let's dive right into it. The roster of Smash Ultimate is the best roster in any video game ever made. I will say that out loud, but that doesn't mean that it's flawless. It has a lot of flaws, just like the stages, and some of it even dives down to the basics of how it's set up, because unlike other Smash Bros. Games, this setup is interesting, because the first Super Smash Bros. Game, it was just set up in, well, it was pretty random actually. It was just set up in order by, I guess, how popular the game was or something. I don't really know how the original was set up, because it just goes down the line of just Mario, Donkey Kong, Link, Samus, Yoshi, Kirby, Fox, Pikachu, and then the other 4 that you unlock just go on either sides of each bar. And it's like, whatever. Now, Melee's is the one that gets pretty weird. I will say it did change the setup of the roster into a pretty more set in order kind of fashion, because it goes down the line of all the Mario characters first, then they just have Donkey Kong, then they have Captain Falcon, and then they have the Star Fox characters on the second row, then they have Ness, Ice Climbers, Kirby, Samus, and then they have the Zelda characters, and then on the bottom they have the Pokemon characters, Mr. Game & Watch, and Marth. And now, this is the game they introduced Echo Fighters in, so they put the Echo Fighter next to the character that they're an Echo Fighter of. So Dr. Mario's next to Mario, Falco's next to Fox, Pichu's next to Pikachu, Roy's next to Marth, Young Link's next to Link, and Ganondorf's next to Captain Falcon. Now you're probably thinking, Ganondorf next to Captain Falcon? That makes no flipping sense. How in the world is a Zelda character an Echo Fighter of a flipping F-Zero character? Well, first of all, Captain Falcon has no moveset potential from F-Zero at all, so his whole moveset is completely BS'd in the game, and while his moveset is probably one of the coolest movesets, Falcon Punch! It's made up. It doesn't exist, whatever. And apparently they thought it was, oh, instead of using Ganondorf's potential from his final boss fight from Ocarina of Time, let's just copy and paste Captain Falcon's moveset because we're lazy. So yeah, that is basically what happened in Melee, and it's alright. The setup's alright. It works. And then in Brawl's setup, Brawl is actually one of the most interesting setups I've ever seen in any fighting game ever made, because Brawl has it set up where instead of having it going in a horizontal fashion, it goes in a vertical fashion. So the first column are the Mario characters, the second column is Donkey Kong characters plus Yoshi and Wario to finish off the Mario characters, the next row is all Zelda characters, the next row after that is Samus, Pit, Ice Climbers, and Rob, then the next row after that is the Kirby characters plus Olimar, then the row after that is the Star Fox characters plus Captain Falcon, and then the next row after that is the Pokemon characters, and then the row after that is the Fire Emblem and Earthbound characters, and then the final column is Mr. Game & Watch, Solid Snake, and Sonic. Now, I actually think this is a really good setup because of how unique it is, because most fighting games always go left and right. This one decided to go up and down, and I think that's really cool. And I will say that there's really no problems with the setup of this roster at all, because it actually works really well. It isn't until Smash 3DS when things just get a little stupid, because in Smash 3DS, they have it set up in like a really weird manner where it goes back to being horizontal just like always, and it starts out with all the Mario characters up to even Wario, and then they just randomly have Mr. Game & Watch at the end, which I guess is fine, and then they have the Donkey Kong characters, but then instead of giving Zelda its own start of a row, they put it in the middle of a row for some reason. So then it goes Zelda characters, and then it goes Metroid characters, then Kid Icarus for some reason gets to be the start of a row, then Fire Emblem, then Kirby, Little Mac at the very end, Star Fox towards the bottom, then all of Pokemon. Again, what? Like, I would have totally expected Pokemon to be the start of a row, but like, okay. Then Duck Hunt and Robber at the end of that row, and then Ness, Captain Falcon, Villager, Olimar, and Wii Fit Trainer are all there on the second to last row, and then Dr. Mario, Dark Pit, and Lucina are the 3 Echo Fighters, so they're just jumbled up together for some reason, and then Shulk, Pac-Man, Mega Man, and Sonic are at the bottom, and then all the DLC 3D characters get a separate page because you know how teeny tiny the flipping 3DS screen is. So you basically have to click like, oh, go to next page just to see the rest of the roster. So this is the only one where I'd have to literally show it in 2 different pieces because the roster can't all be shown all at once. So the 3DS roster, I will say, is set up the worst out of any other Smash game just because it's on the 3DS, but it is set up okay. I mean, this is definitely where they start to truly show the Echo Fighters again, because back in Brawl, they like separated the Echo Fighters to the point where it's like you don't know who's an Echo Fighter even though they technically were still Echo Fighters, and this is the first game that they're basically saying that Roy and Falco are not Echo Fighters anymore, which is stupid because they're basically still Echo Fighters. I don't understand why they keep trying to change up the Echo Fighters across Smash history. Now, the thing with Smash 3DS is that its roster is actually not set up the same as Smash Wii U's. Smash Wii U's, I'll say it's actually even stupider actually, because it starts off with Mario characters and then obviously goes Wario and then Donkey Kong, so basically all Mario characters on the top row. Easy, makes perfect sense. Then Mr. Game & Watch, then Little Mac, and then for some reason they start Zelda off on the first row just to cut it off to go to the second row. I think that looks so sloppy. They should have just put Zelda on the bottom row and then put someone else at the top row. I mean, come on. Like, they should have put Kid Icarus on the top row to be those 2 slots, because after the Zelda finishes off on the second row, it goes Metroid, then Kid Icarus, and then Fire Emblem, and then Duck Hunt, then Kirby. Next row is Star Fox, Pokemon, Rob, Ness, Captain Falcon, Villager, Olimar, Wii Fit Trainer, Shulk, and then you have the 3 Echo Fighters, Dr. Mario, Dark Pit, Lucina, Pac-Man, Mega Man, Sonic, so third-party characters, and then DLC characters, Mewtwo, Lucas, Roy, Ryu, Cloud, Corrin, Bayonetta. Now, this one is set up super similar to 3DS, it's just different in the sense that it actually gets a full TV screen and not a teeny tiny little itty-bitty 3DS screen. So, in a sense, the setup for Smash 4 as a whole is just really sloppy, honestly, because both iterations of it are just not set up that good, and this is where I come back to Smash Ultimate. Smash Ultimate's roster is set up in an interesting way because they actually put it in order by when the character was added to Smash. At least that's what they were trying to do. Because starting with Mario all the way down to Jigglypuff is the Smash 64 characters, except for Dark Samus. Peach all the way to Mr. Game & Watch is the Super Smash Bros. Melee characters, except for Daisy, Lucina, and Chrom. Meta Knight all the way down to Wolf are the Smash Brawl characters, except for Dark Pit. Villager all the way down to Bayonetta are all the Smash 4 characters, except for Ken. And then Inkling all the way through Sora are all Smash Ultimate characters. And then they have the Mii's at the end because I guess they just didn't feel like putting them in the Smash 4 selection because they technically had the same thing in Smash 4 with the Mii's just being at the end. And it's like, I get it because they're the make your own characters, but I feel like they should have been put in the actual slot when they were added to the roster, which is like somewhere before Bowser Jr., but like after Greninja, I think. And it's messed up because of the Echo Fighters, because the Echo Fighters screw it up by they actually felt like it was necessary to put them next to the character they're being Echo Fighter of. Like, I feel like some of them are just so obvious who they're being an Echo Fighter of because of the fact that they have almost the same moveset. So I feel like it's not necessary to have them next to each other. And plus, there's already an option in Smash to put the Echo Fighters stacked over the character that they're an Echo Fighter of, basically reducing the size of the roster. So I feel like it makes sense why they did it, but like it just kind of defeats the whole purpose of the roster setup, where it's supposed to be in order from Smash 64 to Smash Ultimate. And now that you have these Echo Fighters all split across the roster, like Dark Samus should not be in with the 64 characters. Dark Samus should literally be like right after Inkling. Like, some of these characters are just in such wrong places. Like, if I were to put all the characters back in the right places, it'd look like a completely different roster just because of how screwed up the Echo Fighters messed up the way the roster looks. And that's just the way the roster looks, because another whole problem with the roster is just the Echo Fighters in general. Because the Echo Fighters, it's like, what do you define an Echo Fighter of? Echo Fighters are supposed to be characters who have a similar moveset to someone else who's already on the roster. Now, all the Echo Fighters in Smash will include Dark Samus, Daisy, Lucina, Chrom, Dark Pit, Pen, and Richter. Now, that's a lot of Echo Fighters, but the only issue I have with the Echo Fighters is that they make no sense with which ones are Echo Fighters and which ones aren't, because I've already mentioned it before with Falco that he should be an Echo Fighter, but for some reason, according to this roster, he's not an Echo Fighter. And it's like, really? He's just like Ken. I've already mentioned this. He has almost the same moveset as Fox, so therefore he should be an Echo Fighter of Fox. but for some reason they're just considering him not an Echo Fighter, and Ken is. And then that's the stupid part, is like, why is Ken and Ryu, like, why does Ken fall under the Echo Fighter umbrella where he does pretty much fit the description I just said, but other characters like Daisy and Peach and Richter and Simon and Lucina and Marth, where they're pretty much the exact same character. There is almost no difference other than the way the character looks. And it's so sloppy because that's not an Echo Fighter character, that's a clone. It's a copy and paste, 100%. The only difference is just how the character looks. Take, for instance, it's basically Marth going trick-or-treat as Lucina. That's basically how it is. The Echo Fighters are just so sloppy on the roster. I don't understand why they don't know what an Echo Fighter is. And it's alright because the concept of the Echo Fighter is cool because it gives them the opportunity to reuse characters' movesets, and I love that it's in the game. It's just I just really hate how it's executed in the game because it's so sloppy with how some characters are clones and others are actually Echo Fighters. But for the most part, Echo Fighters, they're just Echo Fighters. I mean, there's not much else to say about it. Like, Echo Fighters are just as sloppy as Hard Rock Cafe commercials. Like, it's like Hard Rock Cafe doesn't even know what hard rock is. They literally try to play every other genre of music other than hard rock. That's like what Echo Fighters are. So sloppy, it makes you wonder why they're even doing it in the first place. Now, it's not just Echo Fighters either. The actual movesets for some of the characters are pretty sloppy because they're just kind of poor and don't resemble the character's game that well. Some characters like Captain Falcon, I'll give you a pass because, like, what are you supposed to do? He's from a racing game. What's he supposed to do? Just race around the stage and just like no, you can't do that as a moveset. That's ridiculous. So Captain Falcon, I'll give you a pass. Whereas with other characters like Fox, I already mentioned the Star Fox Assault artillery before. I don't understand why it's not in the game. It seems like such an obvious thing to put in his moveset. And then Link, they didn't actually change, even though Link is literally wearing his champion's tunic from Breath of the Wild and he looks like Link ripped straight out of Breath of the Wild, that's not actually Link from Breath of the Wild. He still has almost the exact same moveset as Link pre-Breath of the Wild. So he just has Ocarina of Time Link's moveset. He just looks like Breath of the Wild. And same thing with basically every other Smash 64 character. Samus, Mario, Donkey Kong, Kirby, Yoshi, Pikachu, blah blah blah. They all have almost the exact same moveset that they had from when they were first introduced in Super Smash Bros. And that is super lame because that's basically Nintendo being too afraid to change the moveset because they're afraid of backlash. It's like, really guys, come on, you could have just taken a small little leap of faith and did something really cool and everyone would forget about their old moveset. I don't understand that logic where you're like too afraid to change the moveset because you don't want the fans to backlash. It's like, really? I get it, the fans are the ones buying the game, but at the same time, they're not the ones who tell you what to do. Because so many of these characters who didn't really have a whole lot of moveset to work with back in Smash 64, they've had a lot more games since then. Like, take Fox, for instance. Star Fox Assault is not the only Star Fox game that's come out since Melee. I mean, back in Melee, Star Fox 64 and the original Star Fox were the only two Star Fox games out at the time. Here we are, Smash Ultimate, and we have Star Fox 64, Star Fox Adventures, Star Fox Assault, Star Fox Command, Star Fox Zero, Star Fox 64 3D, and even Star Fox 2, which was a canceled game that they re-released on Nintendo Switch Online, was released. There's so much to work with, even though not really, because Adventures and Assault are really the only two that have Fox like running around on the ground with guns or whatever kind of weapon. And it's stuff like that. Like, I just proved that so many games came from Star Fox, such a niche franchise. So you can assume that other characters like Link have had probably over 15 games come out since like Melee. So he should have had some kind of moveset change, right? No, he's still the same dude, just looks like Breath of the Wild. So some of the older Smash characters have that issue with like they're basically still the same character. They didn't really add anything. I mean, even with Mario, because, like, sure, they added Cappy for one of his taunts, right? That must mean they changed his... No, they didn't. Now, Mario's not as bad because in Smash Brawl, they actually did add Flood from Super Mario Sunshine into his moveset, so they actually did start trying to change certain movesets, because they did the same thing with Luigi. They they did end up adding the Poltergust or whatever it's called from Luigi's Mansion in there, and it's like, yeah, why couldn't you do that with other characters? Like, don't pander to just the Mario characters. You should be doing this with all the characters who end up getting like cool, drastic different moves in other franchises. And it's not just the Smash 64 characters. I mean, another main issue with the Smash roster is the third-party characters. Now, there's nothing really inherently wrong with the third-party characters, because how could you complain about third-party characters? Nintendo does all that hard work and effort to get the contract with that company to put the character in the game, and it's like, yes, I can understand that, but the fact that they were so sloppy with certain ones, I mean, I'm about to do it again. I already did it before, but I'm about to trash on Sonic. Sonic has probably one of the worst movesets in all of Smash history, just because, I mean, look at him. Let's see. Ball, 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 ball again, and it's like, really, you couldn't just make him have a Sonic moveset? Like, Sonic has probably one of the most potential out of any other character in the roster, because of the fact that he's Sonic the flipping Hedgehog. He has so many video games and so many different moves and stuff from different Sonic games, and this is the best Nintendo could do? Are you kidding me right now? This is ridiculous. He shouldn't have a moveset where it's basically the same move over and over and over again. Like, again, I truly think that Nintendo still has something against Sega. And then this is where I dive back to Echo Fighters. Richter is one of only 2 Echo Fighters who are actually third-party characters, and Richter was the very first character to be added that was the second character from a third-party franchise in Smash, because before Richter, every third-party franchise only had one character on the roster, and then they added Richter, basically opening the door to saying, hey guys, we're willing to add more than one character to certain franchises. But for some reason, they still only have one Sonic character and have 2 Castlevania characters, 2 Street Fighter characters, and oh my goodness, 2 Final Fantasy characters. This is ridiculous. How did we get those franchises I just mentioned with a second character first before Sonic? So yeah, now it just looks super weird that we have 2 Castlevania characters. Sonic the Hedgehog is a way bigger franchise than Castlevania and Street Fighter. Like, what? So there's that issue. And it's not just the third-party representation in the roster, it's also the third-party representation elsewhere in the game. Because in World of Light, they actually have a Monster Hunter themed area, and there's also a Monster Hunter boss fight where you fight Rathalos, and it's like, so there must be a Monster Hunter character in the game, right? No. Absolutely not. There is no Monster Hunter character on the roster whatsoever. It looks like an unfinished project or something. Like, they put Monster Hunter in the game where it has its own area, it has its own boss fight with a boss fight stage that you obviously can't play on the roster, but they go all out to do all this Monster Hunter everything in the game. I mean, Rathalos even is an assist trophy in the game. So why'd they go all out to go ask Capcom, hey guys, can we put Monster Hunter in the game? They say yes. They put Monster Hunter in the game, but don't put the Monster Hunter on the roster. Like, that's who really should have been put on the roster other than Richter. Because even amongst Castlevania fans, Alucard, who was added as an assist trophy, is way more of a main character and more well known than Richter. So really, they only cheesed Richter into the roster just to have him on the roster. He's one of those characters where if he was never added, no one would ask for him. And it's the same thing, because like I've mentioned this before, there's so many characters on the roster that they've added over the years that if they never added them on the roster, absolutely no one would ask for them. I guarantee you 100%. Pichu, Dr. Mario, Richter, Rob, Ice Climbers, and Jigglypuff. No one would ever ask for any of those characters had they never been added. And while some of them have really cool movesets, some of them are just kind of because this is where it dives into the lesser known characters on the roster and or just characters who literally only have one game, so the retro characters. So these retro picks would include Ice Climbers, Mr. Game & Watch, Rob, Duck Hunt, Little Mac, and technically we can count Wii Fit Trainer because of how the Wii at this point in time is almost 20 years old. So now these retro picks are only added in the roster because at one point in time their game was like super hype, super popular, super dope, like these games were popular at one point in time, and then all of a sudden they just kind of died. They have a point to being in the roster, but certain ones just should not be in the game, like Ice Climbers, for example. While the game did sell really good for the NES standards, compared to Duck Hunt, it's kind of sad. I don't understand how we got Ice Climbers and Flipping Melee back in 2001 first, and then it took until Smash 3DS 2014, over a decade later, before we got Duck Hunt, which was, by the way, drastically sold way better than Ice Climbers. Practically sold like 20 times better than Ice Climbers. Like, how did we get Ice Climbers before Duck Hunt? That makes no sense. And that's just the retro characters, and then last, the setup of the DLC characters. Now, this is actually only the second Smash game to have DLC, technically 3 if you count 3DS and Wii U separately, but the setup for DLC characters actually makes perfect sense in Ultimate because it's in order by when they were added to Smash. So literally, all they have to do when they add a DLC character is just slap them at the end of the roster, whereas in Smash 4, they did it in kind of a sloppy way. I mean, had they done it the right way, it probably would have looked just fine, because Ryu, Cloud, and Bayonetta being third party, they could have easily just slapped them at the end of the roster, because in Smash Wii U and Smash 3DS, the third party characters were slapped at the end of the roster. But because Mewtwo, Lucas, Roy, and Corrin were all added to the roster, of which are obviously Nintendo characters, they were slapped at the end of the roster too. So now it looks super weird having these third-party characters, Pac-Man, Mega Man, Sonic, and then going back to first party, Mewtwo, Lucas, Roy, then going back to third party, Ryu, Cloud, and then going back to first party again, Corrin, and then going back to third party again, Bayonetta, and now it just looks super weird. So if it was set up correctly, Mewtwo should have been put like probably right after Charizard, but right before Lucario. Lucas should have been put like literally right after Ness. Roy should have been put right after Marth, and Corrin should have been put right after Robin. Now the setup of Smash 4 in the DLC aspect was really stupid, whereas the setup for DLC and Smash Ultimate is actually genius because it makes perfect sense. And that is basically the whole entire census of how the roster is set up. And the movesets, while I didn't really go too in depth in the movesets because the movesets are honestly just fine for some of them, the only movesets that are really botched are Echo Fighter movesets, and it's alright. It's a really good roster. I'd give that an easy A tier for a roster setup, but in the census of just being the roster as a whole, easy triple S+. That is still the best roster in all of Super Smash Bros. History. Now, this next portion in the video is something that a lot of people probably wouldn't expect to be here, but there's going to be a whole segment where I talk about color swaps. And the reason is because color swaps are one of the most modded things in all of Smash Ultimate, and it's partly because of how some of these characters have really good color/costume swaps that like sparked an idea in so many people's minds that making like these insane references from across specific characters' video game franchise library's history, and it begs the question of why Nintendo slacked off, as you'd put it, on so many of them, because like take Mario for example. Mario is one of them that's like split 50-50, where half of them are like really good and the other half are like, why? Like for instance, the base Mario is base Mario, shouldn't have to explain it. The next one is like this red, white, and blue American palette for Mario, and while it looks like it could be based off 4th of July, it's not. It's based off his golf uniform from Mario Golf, except here's where it's like, really? Because they made it Mario Golf, and while that's a cool color swap or costume swap, whatever you want to call it, instead of literally making it Golf Mario, they just took base Mario and just recolored it. I get it, going out and like doing unnecessary designing, but it's because they have literal Builder Mario in the palette swaps for Mario, so they literally made a whole new texture design for Builder Mario, but they didn't go all out to make the Golf Mario one. Because that's basically the same thing if the Builder Mario were to be just yellow and red version of just regular Mario. But no, they actually went all out and made a Builder Mario. The rest of the Mario color swaps are pretty basic, bland, or just suck, honestly, because the referencing for them is just kind of lame. Like, the green one's literally based off some Japanese box art from almost 40 years ago. Like, really? That couldn't have been literally anything else? Like, you gotta be kidding me right now. But it's stuff like that, because Mario's not the only one who has some stupid color swaps. Take Luigi as another one. Luigi doesn't really have any. They're all literally just color swaps. They just change the color palette. And while that's fine, there is one that is based on Builder Luigi, but instead of being like Builder Mario where they literally put Builder Mario in the game, they just made it a yellow and green version of regular Luigi for some reason. It's like, why go all out to make Builder Mario and then have a color swap for Luigi that represents Builder Luigi, but not make Builder Luigi? Like, it makes no sense. So yeah, there's some inconsistencies there. Another character who has very notable color/costume swaps would be Link, because Link's costume swaps do coordinate back and forth between his like Breath of the Wild tunic design and then his generic green tunic design. The problem with this though is that pretty much all of them are from Breath of the Wild, so even though his green tunic design some people could interpret it as just being based off his original design from the very first Legend of Zelda, at the end of the day, it's literally one of the tunics you can get in Breath of the Wild, so therefore this is all kind of unoriginal by being only from one game when they could have easily just made every single one being from a different game. I mean, they have one that is supposed to reference Link's old design from before Breath of the Wild, but at that point, why not just bring back Link's old design from previous Smash games and previous Zelda games? Because like, why? That doesn't make any sense. They literally had that Link design before. I don't think it would have been so hard to port it into Smash Ultimate. And like, same thing goes for Fierce Deity Link. Was once in Smash as like one of the best color swaps in all of Smash, and then they changed it to like this weird Breath of the Wild hybrid mix that doesn't exist, because like you can tell it's like obviously supposed to be Fierce Deity Link, but that's not what Fierce Deity Link looks like, because they had to like make it mixed with this Breath of the Wild version, and it's like, why? I don't get it. Same thing goes for a couple of the other ones. I mean, the Hylian tunic one is probably one of the only ones that's literally Breath of the Wild. The only difference is that the shield is not actually red, never was, whatever. One of Link's other pretty basic ones is the Skyward Sword based one from the very beginning of Skyward Sword, and honestly it's just the exact same thing with the Fierce Deity Link and the one that's loosely based off Twilight Princess Link. It's like, why couldn't they just rip the Skyward Sword Link straight out of Skyward Sword and put it in there? Instead they had to like make this stuff up. They just changed the color palette. It seems like they were being really cheap on the color swaps, I will say. Dark Link is probably one of the worst ones, because even in Breath of the Wild, this is not what Dark Link looks like. He actually has the Ocarina of Time hairstyle, so it's like, really, they couldn't just do that? I mean, come on. It's not that terrible though. They are good color swaps. Like, at least they're not ugly color schemes or whatever. And then the one that's probably the most annoying one would be the Royal Guard uniform from Breath of the Wild, because like, same thing. They just changed the color palette, being kind of lazy on that one. Just like Link, Samus has the same issue with having like all of her suits based off of actual Metroid games, and the problem with that is none of them are actually the suit from that Metroid game. They're literally every single one is just changing the color of the original color swap. You couldn't just easily port the original design straight out of whatever game it's from. I mean, that couldn't be that hard, but like at the same time, I get it. And this goes for a lot of other characters in the game. I mean, Yoshi has an issue that's actually kind of interesting, because Yoshi's Woolly World is one of the most popular games in the Yoshi series, at least that's what I'm aware of, and that would have made the most sense to be like the one Yoshi color swap that is not just another palette swap version of Yoshi. But no, they didn't pick that one. They picked Crafted World Yoshi because they were trying to, again, just like Roy, they were trying to promote the Yoshi's Crafted World on the Switch before it came out. So it's like, really guys? They should have just put Woolly World version of Yoshi as the last color swap for Yoshi, not one that's from a game that hadn't even released yet. It's like, come on guys, really? Gosh, I hate it when they just use Smash as a billboard ad. Other characters like Kirby's just like Yoshi, where like his color swaps basically make sense because literally in-game, in-universe, there's different versions of said Kirby or Yoshi, and they are quite literally just different colored versions of that character. So there's really no point in going super in-depth with theirs. I already mentioned Fox, I don't have to talk about it. Now, for some reason, a lot of the characters who have like a lot of the best color swaps are actually third-party characters. Like Solid Snake, for instance, like a lot of his color swaps, they have the same issue with like Link's, where they're based off of specific designs from other games, but for some reason, instead of just taking that design straight out of the game, they just changed the color palette off the first color swap, and it's like, come on, really? Come on, you couldn't just plop like a poorly made PlayStation 1 graphics Solid Snake and Smash. I mean, come on, that's not that hard. Whatever. But like, I like how his color swaps actually reference actual designs from past Metal Gear games. Like, I hate it when there's a color swap that like doesn't represent anything, because then it just truly shows that they didn't didn't care and or just didn't put as much effort into them. I mean, like, one of the worst ones is Sonic, because Sonic's color swaps are all basically just a different shade of blue plus black for no reason at all. I mean, it's quite stupid, actually, because Sonic seems like he'd have such obvious color swaps, right? He should have had an orange and red color swap for Tails. He should have had a red and green one for Knuckles. He should have had a pink and red one for Amy. He should have had a black and red one for Shadow. He should have just had literally any other Sonic character to be referenced. Like, no, instead he gets these boring, basic, different versions of blue as literally every single color swap except the black one. Like, really? We couldn't have gotten... This is something I didn't even touch on when I was talking about Sonic's representation in Smash. Like, this is pathetic. It's like, I seriously think that Nintendo still has something against Sega. They couldn't have seriously botched up the Sonic representation and on top of that screwed over Sonic's color swaps. It's like, really? I really don't get it, because it's not that Sonic, it's like Sonic has such terrible color swaps, but then watch me go over to, like, say Sora, because Sora, still being a third-party character from a third-party company that has almost nothing to do with Nintendo, by the way, literally has his default outfit from the first Kingdom Hearts, the second Kingdom Hearts, the third Kingdom Hearts, and then he has his outfit from Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance, he has his Timeless River outfit from Kingdom Hearts 2, he has his Valor form from Kingdom Hearts 2, and he has his Wisdom form from Kingdom Hearts 2, and then he has his quote-unquote ultimate version from Kingdom Hearts 3. Now, obviously, they just gave him the same head design on all of them. I mean, at the end of the day, it's still better than Link, because at least they changed his outfit and didn't just make a color scheme over his first outfit. The inconsistencies with the color swaps is kind of pathetic, honestly, and it almost seems like they were purposely doing it with the DLC characters, because like if I were to go over to Kazuya, for example, all of his color swaps are like, well, he has the same issue with Link, where his first two were two different costumes, and then they just went back and forth by changing the color palette instead of just coming up with new designs. I mean, Tekken has so much potential with the color swaps because of the fact that there's many different outfits that the Tekken characters can wear, because of like the basic make your own character type thing in pretty much every Tekken game since I think Tekken 6, and it's just kind of lame that they only went with Tekken 7 version of Kazuya's suit, because like Kazuya is pretty much well known at this point to always wear like some kind of suit with a tie or whatever, but it's always different, and like, I mean, drastically different, and the fact that his color palette is pretty lame. I mean, the gold version of Kazuya is about the only color swap that, other than the first two, that's like actually exists in Tekken 7 that you don't actually have to force make it, because technically you can make all of these color swaps in Tekken 7, but the thing is, you basically have to just literally change the color palette of a costume that's already in Tekken, whereas the gold one literally exists as a costume. It's just a gold version of his suit. Like, that one actually does exist. And then there's a couple other third-party characters who actually get multiple different characters as color swaps. For example, we have Hero, who has pretty much 4 of his color swaps, so literally half of them are just a different version of Hero from different games, and then the other half is just changing the color palette of one of the heroes. Same thing goes for Steve. Steve, it's like half his color swaps are a different character from Minecraft. You have Steve, Alex, Zombie, and Enderman, but for some reason, unlike Hero, where they quite literally just duplicated every single one, has the original plus 1 color swap for the 4 of them, instead, Zombie and Enderman don't get any color swaps, and Steve and Alex both get 3. It's like, wait, what? That's okay, because Zombie and Enderman, there's not much to work with anyway, and the fact that we even got them as color swaps in the first place is already pretty surprising. So the fact that they're even in the game as color swaps, and I mean with the Smash announcer literally saying like Zombie or Enderman, because sometimes you'll have characters that are loosely referenced as color swaps. Like, for instance, they're not actually said in-game. Take Dark Link, for instance. Dark Link is technically a separate character in the Zelda universe, or at least like a doppelganger version. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's one of those things, it should say Dark Link separately, Dark Link or something, because they say Dark Pit, they say Dark Samus. Why couldn't you just put the Dark in front of Dark Link on the one color swap over Link? I don't think that would have been that hard. Oh yeah, Yeah, and Sonic is not the only one who has just awful color swaps. For some reason, probably the two most famous third-party characters in Smash have the worst color swaps. I already mentioned one was Sonic, and the other one is Pac-Man. Now, this seems silly, right? Because I already mentioned how they don't have the Pac-Man maze in Smash. So on top of that, Pac-Man has terrible color swap. It's even worse than Sonic, because at least Sonic, they decided to change the shade of blue, so at least he's a different color. Pac-Man, he's quite literally the exact same thing, but they just added these little feather and glove sleeve things on him, and then changed that back and forth. What? You couldn't just change the color? Who allowed this? This is unacceptable. This is ridiculous. He has the worst color swaps in the entire game. Literally, before Pac-Man was added to Smash, I didn't think it was possible to have color swaps worse than Sonic, but this is just sad. This is just sad on a whole new level. So yeah, the color swaps, it's some of these characters have really cool color swaps, and some of them have really bad color swaps, but the majority of the characters in Smash quite literally only have the original design, and then the other 7 are just changing the color of that original design. That's what I was mentioning way back at the beginning of this short little rant on the color swaps, is that color swaps are literally one of the top most modded things in all of Smash. Number 1 would be characters. Obviously, people modding their character they wanted in Smash that didn't make it into Smash. Duh. Number 2 would be stages, because you'd want the stage to go with the said modded character you just modded in the game, right? And then the third one would be color swaps, because so many color swaps are so botched and so stupid, because either there is no referencing or the referencing is literally stupid. Of course, it's the third most modded thing in all of Smash. So it's one of those things Smash Ultimate, while the roster itself is pretty much just the stages where it's really good and really bad at the same time, the color swap, sadly, I'd say it's actually over 70% terrible, and it's only bad because they introduced such cool color swaps. It's why couldn't you do that with every single character? Some of them I'll give you a pass, there's nothing to work with Duck Hunt, whereas other characters like Link, it's really, you couldn't put as much effort into Link as you did with Sora. Really, it's annoying, I will say. So yeah, the color swaps as a whole, it's annoying. That's really all it is. It's just annoying that they didn't put as much effort into it as they did with other characters. That's really all I'm saying. So at this point, I guess I can move on to the Miis and the Amiibo. I'll talk about the Miis first. The Miis were first introduced in Smash 4 with 3 different types of Miis. The Mii Brawler, the Mii Sword Fighter, and the Mii Gunner. It's basically just like any other fighting game, or really anything where it's the make your own character, because I guess it's as simple as oh, you don't like everybody on the roster, so here, make your own person. It's yeah, I get the concept. It's an interesting concept. I literally used up all 99 Mii slots in Smash just because I'm that big of a dork. So yeah, the Miis are really cool in the sense that you do get to literally make whoever you want within reason, because they are basically still Miis. They use the Miis that you make on your Switch, and then you get to design them with their specific move sets and the costumes they're wearing, hats, whatever. And while yes, it's all cool, some of the intricacies are kind of stupid. The fact that they give Mii fighters Mii outfits to represent characters who are not going to be on the roster, but it's kind of a stupid argument for that, because they add some specific characters on the roster, and then they also have a Mii outfit for some reason. Almost everybody of the original 12 characters from the first Smash Bros. Game have a Mii outfit. So it's really weird that characters like that get a Mii fighter outfit and are also allowed on the roster, but then other characters who got a Mii fighter outfit apparently can't be on the roster. So that argument is stupid. And for me personally, I feel like those characters shouldn't even have Mii outfits, because it makes no sense. It destroys the whole purpose of the Miis. You're supposed to be making your own character, and it's kind of stupid when they add in these Mii outfits that are supposed to be resembling or supposed to be for one specific video game character, because then their only purpose is to make that one character, when the whole point of the Miis is to make your own character of infinite possibilities, not not just one guy. So that's all I really have to say about the Miis. And then there's the amiibo. Now the amiibo, just like the Miis, were introduced in Smash 4, and the whole concept of the amiibo are literally based off of Smash Bros. Trophies from Smash Melee and Smash Brawl. So all of amiibos probably wouldn't exist without Super Smash Bros. I know it's really weird to think about, but like, it makes sense. And it's also interesting to think that Super Smash Bros. Is probably the only series that has over 100 amiibo, and that's crazy. So in a sense of collecting all of them, it's like so stupid because you're spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars just collecting these amiibo. And I guess it's okay though, because amiibo, unlike all these other sold separately figurine character video games from about a decade ago, like Disney Infinity, Skylanders, and Lego Dimensions, amiibo actually sold pretty well and are still around to this very day. And the only reason they stuck around, unlike those other three I just mentioned, is because you do not need the amiibo to play the game. Whereas with Disney Infinity, Skylanders, and Lego Dimensions, you literally need at least one or two figurines just to play the game. Whereas with Smash Bros, you can play the game just fine without even buying a single amiibo. I know that just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. It's like, how did they sell well if people don't even have to buy them? Well, I guess people are more prone to buying it if they don't have to than when they have to. It's one of those instances like you'd rather buy it out of sheer will than buying it because you're forced to. And I love how they executed them in Smash, because in different Nintendo games they do different stuff, and in Smash specifically they literally add a whole, I would say basically an AI CPU in Smash that you get to fight and level up. And like, apparently what I've learned off a couple of them is that they basically learn off of other fighters and basically whoever else is in the match. And I don't know, it's one of those things, like, I've gotten myself a couple of amiibos myself, and I will say that it is kind of true, honestly. Back when I first got a couple of them, they were like really terrible, always losing, and now that I've leveled them up for over a couple years now, they have basically become the equivalent of like a human person playing Smash almost, which is kind of weird to think about, but not really at the same time. It's quite literally like a human, real live person playing Smash, but mixed with the CPU. That's basically what the amiibos are, because they still do some pretty stupid moves and stuff that CPUs would do. But I will say that the amiibo are really good opponents to fight in Smash, because they actually are really helpful when I'm trying to like get better at Smash, because let's be honest, all of us need a little practice here and there. And here's how you do it, because I know fighting CPUs, once you get really good at fighting the level 9 CPUs, you can't fight anything harder than that, because level 9 is the top most powerful CPU. So once you're able to beat those easily, how are you supposed to get something harder? And it is through the amiibos, because if you give the amiibo a spirit, like when you first start leveling up or whatever, and then you don't give yourself a spirit in battle, you're automatically put at a disadvantage. And I found that that's like an easy way to like train, if you know what I mean, because when you're put in that disadvantage, you're basically putting yourself in an instance where you have to actually try harder, and it's not just too easy. So I do prefer to use the amiibos when I'm actually trying to get better at Smash, but if I'm just playing casually, then I'll just be fighting CPUs. The amiibo in game, they're really good. Now, the actual figurines themselves are also really good because they're so highly detailed. I know sometimes I'll have an amiibo every now and then that's be a sloppy paint job or whatever, but Funko Pops have the same thing, so it's like you can't really complain about that. One of the main issues I have is the Kazuya amiibo specifically, because while the amiibo itself looks really good by itself, comparing the size of it compared to other amiibo is actually pathetic, because of the fact that Kazuya makes pretty much everybody else look like a midget in comparison. I mean, putting Kazuya next to Sephiroth proves my point, because Kazuya, it looks so large. He doesn't just make Sephiroth look short, he literally makes Sephiroth look like a midget. Like, he looks so tiny. Like, why is Kazuya so big? I don't know why they did this, especially for the fact that his feet aren't even sitting on the little pad. Like, they had to put these clear, ugly pieces of plastic just to keep him attached to the platform. And it's like, why? You wouldn't even have to do that if he was just smaller, then he'd be able to fit on it. So the sizing with a couple of the amiibo is stupid, but I don't know whose fault that is to blame. Like, I don't know who's in charge of the merchandising at Nintendo, but yeah, the amiibo and the Miis, it's really good. It's definitely really good. The only complaint complaints I have about it are like nitpicky, so that's not enough to say it's bad. So it's really good. It's really good. Now, one of the special modes in Smash Ultimate was the Spirits section, which inevitably led to World of Light. First, I'll talk about the Spirits. The Spirits replaced the trophies, because throughout Melee Brawl and Smash 4, the trophies were like these collectibles that you could get, which were obviously based off of other characters who like didn't make the cut in the roster, so that way they could be represented in the game without being playable characters. And it was a really cool way to represent these franchises more so than they already were. So they wanted to bring it back, but they didn't bring back trophies. They introduced something new, and that is Spirits. Spirits, on the other hand, unlike trophies where they're just fun to look at, they actually give you like boosts in battle. Say for instance, some will like make you run faster, or some will like make you slower, or some will make you stronger, blah blah blah. You get the idea. Now, the only issue I have with Spirits is the fact that they took away the small little short biography on the character, because back when trophies were a thing, they actually had this like short little paragraph telling you about the character, the origins of the character, what the character did in the story in the game that said character was from. It's one of those things that they just don't have it in Ultimate for some reason. I mean, I can understand why. It's probably because they just didn't feel like typing up all these paragraphs for more than 1,000 spirits, but it's one of those things that like it would have been cool if they had done it, you know? Like no one would have complained. It would have been something really awesome to have, and it's just not in the game. So yeah, that's all I really have to say about Spirits. They work in the game, whatever. Now let me talk about World of Light. World of Light, okay. In order to talk about World of Light, I have to talk about the original story mode from Super Smash Bros. Brawl, Subspace Emissary. I've mentioned it a couple times before, and Subspace Emissary was the best story mode in any Smash game, and that's also by process of elimination, because there are literally only 2 Smash games that have a legitimate storyline, and that is Ultimate and Brawl's easily wins. So Subspace Emissary was really cool with the way it was told, because even though there was no dialogue in any of the cutscenes, some of these cutscenes are just so legendary, honestly. I mean, just viewing a couple of them is crazy, because like some of this you just wouldn't even believe is real. I mean, who in the world would have thought that Lucario would just pick up a box and oh my goodness, it's Solid Snake from Metal Gear Solid. I mean, some of these are just crazy. And then on top of that, they also had the epic final boss against Taboo, and it was just a really cool storyline. Like, I called Brawl underrated for a reason, and this is the reason why it's underrated. Now, because of Ultimate having way more characters, you'd think that Ultimate would easily beat Brawl's storyline, but it didn't, because before Brawl was released, a bunch of the cutscenes were leaked on the internet, and Sakurai actually took it personally and actually got mad that they were leaked. So apparently he thought that he was going to punish the fans for it by just not making any high def cutscenes or a real legitimate story mode in Ultimate. So that's why there's not a whole lot of storytelling in World of Light, because World of Light, while it does have some really HD high definition cutscenes with dialogue this time, there's only like a single digit number of them, and even then it's only like 5, and like compared to Brawl's 30. So it is kind of pathetic, honestly, and I feel like that was a really stupid reason to just not include it in Ultimate. I would actually understand the argument that they didn't include it, because how in the world are you supposed to have this epic collaboration and try and include all 70, 80 some odd characters in the roster? That's understandable. But World of Light, it's just alright. Like, it is literally just alright, because the whole incentive of the entire story is just collecting pretty much every single spirit in the game, and that's fine. It's just I wish they did something more, especially with getting all these crazy crossovers. Like, could you imagine if there was like a cutscene between like Cloud Strife and Link from The Legend of Zelda? I mean, that would blow up the flipping internet. I mean, full dialogue cutscenes. I don't mean just Brawl's cutscenes, I mean like full dialogue, because they did have full dialogue in the first cutscene.
Don't let a single one get away!
We'll each need to take down about 10.
Stow your fear. It's now or never.
We'll win this. I know we will.
I hear the dialogue and I watch this cutscene from the very beginning of the game, and it makes me wish on like the what if it had gotten like full-blown cutscenes throughout the whole story and not just like the very beginning and the very end. And it's interesting, I will say. So I know this section was kind of short, but like that's all I really have to say about it because it's just alright. Like there's nothing else really to say about it. I just wish they went a little more in depth with the story. That's basically all I'm saying. And now, here we are at the very end of the video, which at this point in time, it's kind of obvious on what I'm going to talk about next, and that is the DLC for Smash Ultimate. Much like the roster, I can guarantee you this is going to be a huge ranting and raving rampage on my part. So, let's dive right into it. Starting off, we have Piranha Plant, technically, because it was originally added as a free downloadable character for a limited time only with Smash Ultimate when it first came out. And obviously with it being a limited time offer, it ended up just becoming a regular DLC character. Now, Piranha Plant is easily the worst one of all the DLC fighters because why in the world did Nintendo literally choose Piranha Plant over literally anybody else? It was definitely a troll. Like, Nintendo, Sakurai, anybody could have literally added some mind-blowing third-party characters to get the ground running with the DLC, especially since they had already done DLC in the previous Smash Bros. Game, and everybody knew what Nintendo was capable of with getting crazy contracts, with getting Ryu, Cloud, and Bayonetta, all third-party characters in Smash 4, so them just coming out and saying that Piranha Plant was the first DLC fighter instantly set the bar so low that it's kind of pathetic, honestly. I mean, looking back at it, it doesn't really matter because of the rest of the DLC fighters, and all Piranha Plant has going for it is the moveset, because Piranha Plant didn't even come with a stage or like any music or anything. It quite literally was just the fighter, and Piranha Plant is pretty lame as a character. The moveset is about the only thing that's good about Piranha Plant, because at the end of the day, it's Piranha Plant. It's like trying to make an argument for something that's bad. Like I just gotta move on to Joker. Joker was the next DLC fighter, and instantly everyone just lost their flipping minds when Joker was announced, because like I had heard of Persona 5, like I had heard of its amass popularity and fame because of how apparently good the game is. I still haven't played it, probably never will. So I know that Joker, obviously being revealed as the first true DLC character in Smash, everyone instantly just got their minds blown because of how Nintendo, I feel like that Sakurai or Nintendo did this on purpose. Like they had to have done it on purpose. Why would they have put Piranha Plant out first to set the bar so low, then to immediately blow everyone's minds with another crazy third-party character, who, by the way, Joker's owned by Atlus, in which Atlus is owned by Sega. So we technically have 3 Sega characters in Smash, but not really. Still, Joker was a really cool character who was added. His stage is really cool. There's tons of music, and it is actually like legitimate music with lyrics, which is really rare, honestly. The only other franchises in Smash that really have that are like, well, really only Sonic. There's only like a couple other singular tracks from across other franchises, but Sonic's about the only other franchise in all of Smash that the majority of the music has lyrics, therefore making it not just themes ripped straight from video games. They were like actual music tracks that could have been sold on an album or something. So in the music aspect, Joker knocked it out of the ballpark, adding a bunch of more music to Smash Ultimate, and the stage was just really cool to look at and really cool to play on, and the stage can actually change the way it looks depending on what song you use. I think it's based on the specific Persona games, Persona 3, Persona 4, and Persona 5. So yeah, Joker was a really insane addition to Smash. I'll give that easily a solid 10 out of 10. Hero was the next DLC fighter added to Smash, and Hero, well, okay, so Hero, everyone at first was just like, oh my gosh, it's another anime sword fighter, because we already have more than a dozen anime sword fighters in Smash. Like, that's one problem with Smash, is that there's just not enough regular fighters. It's riddled with sword fighters, mostly anime sword fighters, but so people really didn't have their hopes up too high with Hero, but he was third party, so that helped a little bit because it was a Square Enix character, and at first everyone thought Square Enix was a super hard company to get, but looking back at it, apparently they're super easy to get a contract with. So Hero has a very interesting moveset compared to literally any other fighter in the game, because he actually incorporated the RPG mechanics from the home series he's from, Dragon Quest, and I will say it's probably one of the coolest movesets in all of Smash. I mean, he literally, I don't even know, he has so many different attack moves in his like RPG-esque fighting style that it's like, it instantly makes him one of the best characters in Smash. So the fact that they knocked it out of the ballpark so much, 2 characters in a row with the DLC, already proves that they were definitely taking the DLC seriously with going all out. And like the stage is fine. I mean, it's not as cool as Joker's, but it's a good stage. It's decent. It's not a terrible stage. It's just a decent stage. The music's alright, like nothing too crazy. But this time, unlike Joker, who was just Joker, Hero, we actually got a couple of the other Hero protagonists from across the Dragon Quest franchise. So we got the base Hero, which is from Dragon Quest XI, which was apparently at the most recent Dragon Quest game at the time. And then another one was Dragon Quest IV Hero. And then another one was Dragon Quest VIII Hero. And then the most famous and most recognizable one was Dragon Quest III Hero. Because even I had never played Dragon Quest. I didn't really know anything about Dragon Quest, but even I recognized Dragon Quest III Hero because like he looks very familiar, because Dragon Quest III is legitimately one of the most popular games in the series. And then the 4th character in the DLC lineup is Banjo and Kazooie. And Banjo and Kazooie, well, okay, this one's interesting. Well, fans, specifically Nintendo 64 fans, have been begging for Banjo and Kazooie in Smash for a very, very long time. Ever since Super Smash Bros. 64. Because Banjo and Kazooie was literally one of the top best-selling games on the Nintendo 64. So, of course, the 64 fans were begging for him to get into Smash. And when he finally did, everyone was disappointed because his moveset is literally one of the top most annoying movesets in the entire game. Now, it's one of those arguments just like how I mentioned with Steve's moveset earlier with the fan base, but like, it's one of those things like, it's like he's purposely designed that way, and it's like you can't really blame him because that's just how Nintendo designed the character, whatever. The stage is an interesting stage because it like spins around. The music's just like Hero, it's alright. So Banjo and Kazooie it's just alright. Like, it's okay, because I think it's literally one of those types of characters where like literally only the die-hard Nintendo 64 fans were like, oh my gosh, this is insane! But then guys like me who's never played Banjo Kazooie, I'm like, okay, like, I literally could care less. That was my reaction to Banjo-Kazooie. So, solid character, whatever. Not super hyped about it, but, like, solid character. Next down the list was Terry Bogard from Fatal Fury. And Terry... I feel sorry for Fatal Fury. Fatal Fury is one of the few franchises that got a DLC character in Smash where it's like the franchise isn't exactly relevant anymore. Fatal Fury, before being added to Smash, was kind of like this irrelevant 90s-esque fighting game. And it shows. Like, you just take one look at Terry Bogard and you can tell he's from the 90s. Like, he looks so uber 90s. Like, him and Sonic, it's so obvious. 90s, 90s, 90s. They scream 90s. And that's fine. Like, I love how they add, like, these retro characters, especially obscure retro characters, because then it's truly showing the mass amount of video game history in Smash. So I love that they included him. Cool retro pick. He has a really cool moveset, especially since there's not that many basic fighting characters in Smash. So having that another basic fighting character come to the game was really cool. Even though the stage is pretty basic, it actually has this interesting gimmick where it has these like invisible walls that you cannot break through unless someone does like a super strong attack, and then you can like break through it and then the character gets KO'd. Like, it's a cool gimmick, whatever. The music is fine, but it's absurd. I feel like it should not have gotten more than 50 music tracks. Like, that's kind of stupid, but other than that, it's fine. He's solid character, just like the last 4. Now comes the final DLC character of DLC Pack Volume 1. Now, you're probably thinking, oh my goodness, this lineup of DLC characters is absolutely insane. They must have went totally out of the ballpark with adding a super insane, crazy character as the final DLC character, right? No. They added Byleth. Yeah, Byleth is a really cool character, really solid character, I will say that. But the placement of when they released Byleth was pretty sloppy, because at the time, no one knew that there was going to be another DLC pack. They pretty much thought that Volume 1 was going to be the only DLC pack. So everyone was hyped up thinking that the final DLC character was going to be something insane, something crazy. They thought it was going to be like Master Chief, they thought it was going to be Crash Bandicoot, they thought it was going to be Steve, they thought it was going to be Sora, they thought it was going to be Dante. Dante. They thought it was going to be the Doom guy. Like, they thought it was going to be something so crazy that they wouldn't even be able to wrap their heads around how Nintendo got the contract. But then they literally come out and make it not only a first-party Nintendo character, but another Fire Emblem character. So, yeah. It's just the placement. Byleth should have been like the second or third DLC character, not the final one. That's all I'm saying, because Byleth is a solid character. I'd give Byleth a 9 out of 10, and the only reason it's not a 10 out of 10 is because Byleth is the 8th Fire Emblem character in Smash. That is the only reason I'm knocking off a whole point. So Byleth is a solid character. I just wish they placed Byleth in a different spot and not as the final DLC character, because that was super sloppy on Nintendo's side. I don't know what they were thinking, but they saved it by revealing that there was going to be another DLC pack. So the first one was Min Min, so they were doing the exact same thing again by announcing like some D-tier Nintendo character as the first one. And the only thing Min Min had going for her before she was even like added to the game was the fact that she was from another basic fighting game, because like I said, there's so many sword fighters and not a whole lot of basic fighting characters. But the problem is her moveset is just so jank, broken, cringe. Like, it's not a good moveset, honestly. Like, it is a very broken trash moveset, I will say. I've played her a couple times and I just can't seem to be good at her, so her moveset fails. She must be a popular character to save her. Well, no, she's not. She's actually not. She's not even the main character of ARMS. It's Springman or Ribbon Girl, the two characters on the front cover of ARMS. But the reason why they didn't add those two is because Springman was already added in as an assist trophy and also as a Mii Fighter outfit. And same thing with Spring Girl, she was already added in as a Mii Fighter outfit as well. So they felt it necessary that they had to add an ARMS character, but because the other two were already in the game to some extent, they thought they couldn't add them, so they went down to one of the other lesser known characters in the game, thus giving us Min Min. And now it looks super weird on the roster having this ARMS character who isn't even the main character. And it's like, really? That's it. Like if they got a Street Fighter contract, but they already had Ryu and Ken elsewhere in the game, whether it was as spirits or assist trophies, whatever. So they went down the line and then added Chun-Li. It's like, how do you have Chun-Li but not Ryu? Like, that's like what it is with ARMS. So adding Min Min was a pretty ballsy choice, I will say, and a pretty big waste of a slot on the roster that could have literally been anybody else that many fans have been begging for decades. So yeah, Min Min is like, I'd give her like a 4 out of 10, because at least it's a pretty interesting original moveset and it's not like copy and paste, and at least the stage is at least it's interesting to look at. It is a basic stage that really has nothing. It has those little spring panels, like whatever. Yeah, Min Min's just a character. And then they immediately saved themselves again, just like DLC Pack Volume 1, by adding Steve, literally the character that broke Twitter for being revealed in Smash. Like, everyone legitimately lost their minds. Even I lost my mind when I found out that they put Minecraft in Smash. That's one of those third-party franchises that's like so mind-blowing. It's like, how did Nintendo get this contract? This is insane. Literally insane. I know I was not one of the people who were immediately jumping on the Minecraft hater bandwagon, because I actually wanted Steve in Smash because Minecraft is the biggest, top, best-selling game in the history of forever. So I wanted him in the game because I had played Minecraft. I was like, this game's amazing. I want it in Smash. But there were a bunch of people who didn't want Minecraft in Smash because they thought it would be cringe. They thought it'd be memed. They thought it'd be just absolutely garbage. They thought he was going to have a terrible moveset. And like, I don't blame them. I mean, looking at Minecraft, it looks like a game that wouldn't even fit in with this crazy crossover Nintendo fighting game, so of course I don't blame him. But they knocked it out of the ballpark so much. He has one of the best movesets in the entire game. While everyone's literally fighting each other on the stage, you can literally just be mining in the ground and playing Minecraft while in Smash. I don't think I've ever seen that before with any other characters, because like, think about it. If you're playing as Fox McCloud, you can't play Star Fox in Smash. You're playing Super Smash Bros. Fox McCloud in Smash. Minecraft, Steve, you're literally playing Minecraft while playing Smash. I never thought it'd be possible to play two video games at the same time. Steve legitimately made that possible. Steve is like a 100 out of 10, honestly. And I'm not even that big of a Minecraft fan. That's the crazy part. I didn't think I would ever see a character from a game that I'm like, like, I like Minecraft. I'll play it a couple times. I want him in Smash. He's a cool character. Whatever. They put him in Smash. I'm literally, my mind is blown. This guy is insane. 100 out of 10. Nintendo, you did an amazing job. Oh my gosh. And then the next character they added was Sephiroth. Now, even people who've never played Final Fantasy can admit that this is an insane pick. Because I mentioned it before, Sephiroth is the very first true third-party villain to be added into Smash. Now, I don't count Zombie and Enderman because they're color swaps. I mean true with their own moveset, separate fighter on the roster. And that's crazy because we didn't get Eggman, we didn't get Dr. Wily, we didn't get M. Bison, we didn't get blah blah blah, we didn't get any of these other like super famous third-party video game villains yet, and then we get Sephiroth, probably one of the most legendary, most famous third-party villains of all time, and it's like one of those from like a rated T video game. Like, everyone thought for the most part that our first third-party villain would be Dr. Eggman. I'm pretty sure that's what most people thought, and the fact that it was Sephiroth of all villains is crazy. So that alone gives him like an 8 out of 10 just for that. And then on top of that, it fixed the Final Fantasy VII representation, because I mentioned it earlier in the video how terrible the representation for Final Fantasy VII was. Sephiroth fixed that, so that already brings him up to a 10 out of 10, and I didn't even talk about his moveset yet. His moveset is amazing. He is broken in the sense with his sword, because just look at the size of that thing. I mean, it's ridiculous. He can hit people from like the other side of the stage. But he's a really cool character. S tier, easy 10 out of 10. You're seeing the repetition here with all the third-party characters in DLC, right? They knocked the third-party characters out of the ballpark, but for some reason with the Nintendo characters, they just dropped the ball so hard, because here comes the next character, Pyra and Mythra from Xenoblade Chronicles 2. And this is the exact same issue with Min Min from ARMS. Pyra and Mythra, they're not the main characters. Well, they are, but they're not. Rex is the main character from Xenoblade 2, and the problem with that is Rex had the exact same thing with Springman, where he was already added in the game as a Mii Fighter outfit, so they felt it necessary to represent Xenoblade to the point of, like, it needs a character on the roster for some reason, so they added Pyra and Mythra in the game, and while, yes, I actually can understand it, because looking back, they were two of the most, or at least Pyra was one of the most asked characters in all of Smash, but it's not for the reason that most people are thinking. I mean, I don't want to talk about this. Why do I have to talk about Xenoblade 2? Oh! Xenoblade 2 is one of the stupidest games I have ever seen in my life. And I will say that to someone's face, because this game is... it's so inappropriate. Why do I have to talk about this? So, Xenoblade 2, I don't know why Sakurai felt it necessary to add this into the game. I mean, like, I get it. I guess they saw the sales and saw that it sold really well. Blah, 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 blah. But it's just because something's popular doesn't mean it's good. And, like, I feel like I come off as a hypocrite saying this because I've never played it. But, like, I've seen a lot of the gameplay. I've seen a lot of the cutscenes. I've seen a lot of everything from this game just because of how popular it is. And apparently every YouTuber on the flipping planet who plays Smash has to talk about Xenoblade because it's in the game. And this game, the gameplay looks really boring and basic. The cutscenes make me think it's degenerate for inappropriate reasons. It's just not a good game, man. The original Xenoblade Chronicles is a cult classic, so the fact that the sequel feels it necessary to pander to the anime fans seems a little weird, but I don't know, it was a very bad choice of a character. I mean, if they wanted to add another anime sword fighter character, they might as well have added another Fire Emblem character. I honestly don't see what would have been worse. So, yeah, it was just another sorry excuse to throw in another Fire Emblem character, basically, except while not being a Fire Emblem character. And Xenoblade 2 was just a terrible pick. I mean, if they wanted to add another Nintendo character to promote a new game on the Switch, they should have just done something like, honestly, they should have added another Zelda character. I've mentioned how bad the representation is with the roster of Zelda characters. This would have been the perfect time if they wanted to say, okay guys, let's take a break from getting all these third-party contracts. It's driving us silly. We are losing our breaths getting all these contracts. Let's do a first-party Nintendo character. Someone should have raised their hand and said, a Zelda character, come on guys. And apparently no one did because we got another Xenoblade character. So yeah, they dropped the ball really hard on that one. But don't worry, they saved themselves a little bit when they announced Kazuya as the next fighter. So Kazuya, obviously being from Tekken, has a ton of moveset potential, and being another character having a basic fighting moveset, therefore fixes the problem with Pyra and Mythra adding another anime sword fighter. They add another basic fighter. So they fixed their mistakes, sort of, and added Kazuya. So Kazuya's moveset is actually really cool, but Kazuya has the same issue with Steve. A lot of people had a bunch of backlash with his moveset because of how broken it is and how overpowered it is, and I consistently see the memes on the internet about how a flipping 4-year-old could play Kazuya and win. Now, while you're not inherently wrong, I'm only gonna say that he has a simplest, like a easy moveset to like play around with if you're picking up Smash for the first time, but people who are actually talented at playing the character, much like myself, because Kazuya's legitimately probably like my second or third main, it's one of those things that like he has a really good moveset. It's just that these people who keep losing to him, I feel like these people complaining, like I already mentioned it before, that like Smash Bros as a whole, the whole roster is broken. So making the argument that there's like a specific character on the roster that's like the number one most broken character in Smash is actually just really stupid, because the entire roster has some kind of broken ability, whether it's good or bad, and it's balanced out so fine that people who complain about it are honestly just crybabies. I'm not lying. Like, so Kazuya's moveset, while it did get a bunch of backlash, he's actually a solid character, and being from a third-party franchise, you can't really complain. I mean, when they get these crazy third-party characters, especially a PlayStation character, can we acknowledge the fact that Nintendo time and time again has added PlayStation character after PlayStation character in Smash, and people for some odd reason keep complaining? Like, are you kidding me right now? We're getting PlayStation characters in Smash. Let's jump back to 2001, Super Smash Bros. Melee. If someone said, hey, wouldn't it be cool if Cloud was in Smash? I guarantee you people would look at you like you're an idiot. Like, there's no way that, like, people are just spoiled. Smash Ultimate has spoiled the fan base so much with all of these third-party crossovers that, like, apparently people don't remember what it was like way back when third-party characters weren't even in the game. Like, the fact that we've gotten Kazuya, Tekken, what? Like, these PlayStation franchises that no one in a million years would have ever thought to come into Smash, and people backlash over his moveset. Like, bro, shut up. Oh yeah, and how the music tracks, it's a giant music track, so that's huge. And the stage is just kind of basic. It could have been a little better. So then here we are, 5 of the 6 DLC characters have finally been added to the game for DLC Fighter Pass Volume 2, and now everyone's having the debate on who the final character is gonna be. I remember seeing so many different guesses and so many different predictions on who the final character was gonna be, and so many people thought it was going to be Dante, so many people thought it was going to be Doomslayer, so many people thought it was going to be Sora, so many people thought it was going to be another boring first-party Nintendo character because of how Nintendo dropped the ball in the first one, and some people were right. Sora was the final DLC character, and even people who've never played Kingdom Hearts, much like people who never played Final Fantasy with Sephiroth, they acknowledge that Sora was easily the best pick to be the final character in Smash, because that one added a character that some people thought would be impossible. And it's not because he was a third-party character, it's because he was half owned by flipping Disney. Disney, big conglomerate, billion, trillion dollar company Disney, big Mr. Big Britches Disney that feels the necessity to own everything and won't let anyone use their stuff. Oh well, I guess they let people use their stuff nowadays, but you get what I'm saying. It's Disney. No one thought that in a million years Nintendo would even be able to get on Disney's front porch and say, "Hey, can we have Sora?" Like, no, it was almost like a dream. It literally was a dream come true. And here's the thing too. I acknowledge Sora as being one of the best, if not the best, character to have ever been added into Smash Ultimate. And it's just like Steve. I'm not that big of a Kingdom Hearts guy. The video games are alright. I've played them. I've played the main 3 games through, and the gameplay's alright. The story's good. It's okay. Like, I'm not super big into RPGs, but I will acknowledge that Sora is legitimately the best character to have ever been added into Smash Ultimate. I mean, I don't know what else to say. It was literally the most perfect pick to add. I can understand the people who were really thinking it was going to be Doomslayer because Sakurai and Nintendo were just leaving all these posts and hints making Doom references, and yeah, I get it, but then they revealed Doomslayer as a Mii Fighter outfit, so they technically weren't wrong. They were adding Doom Guy into Smash, just not as a fighter. They were adding him in as a Mii Gunner, so So yeah, Doom is in Smash now. I mean, that's really weird to think about. This super rated M, rated R, inappropriate, gory game from the 90s. Guys, the fact that it's even in Smash is crazy. I just mentioned this with the third-party representation. It's like, go back to Melee. People would think you're an idiot if you ask for Cloud. I mean, it's crazy, because, like, yeah, so Sora was definitely the greatest character to have ever been added into Smash, period. And looking back at all 12 DLC fighters, technically 11, I will say that it's really weird that Nintendo put so much effort into the third-party characters, and then every single first-party Nintendo character, it almost seems like they just didn't care. Because I think this is just a conspiracy, but I truly think, other than Piranha Plant, the other 3 first-party Nintendo characters were solely added in the game just for the sake of being a billboard ad. Now, it's not as bad as Roy, because at least their games had already been released. It almost seems so unnecessary. Like, those games were already selling good. I can wrap my head around Byleth. Byleth's the main character. Fire Emblem Three Houses is the best-selling game in the entire Fire Emblem series. Byleth gets a pass, and that's saying something for him being a Fire Emblem character. Like, Min Min and Pyra Mythra, I feel like it's sloppy. It's so sloppy. So, the DLC as a whole, because of Steve and Sora, instantly makes it like an easy A tier for the DLC as a whole. But because of the sloppy job they did with Piranha Plant, Min Min, and Pyra and Mythra, if you don't want to count Piranha Plant, it's still really bad with Min Min and Pyra and Mythra, then yeah, I think it would be a solid like A+, S-, if that's a thing. So yeah, the DLC as a whole is really good, and there's really nothing else to say. I mean, the DLC is amazing. It added onto an already really good game. It helped fix a lot of the representation in the game. The DLC was just amazing. It was definitely worth the purchase for the most part, but yeah. Thank you, Sakurai, for adding these characters. Some of these are just changing the course of video gaming history. So looking back at the entirety of Smash Ultimate as a whole, there's really no real good word to describe it, because after this whole video, I noticed that I complain about it so much, but at the same time, it's literally my all-time favorite game in existence. So I can't say it's terrible, but I can't say it's not terrible, and I can't say it's like not good either. The only real way to describe Smash Ultimate is literally the best video game ever made, and that's insane. So with all the flaws and everything included, like I don't know why. I guess just the way that Smash Ultimate feels, I guess, is just makes it my favorite video game, because it's been my favorite video game ever since I played it for the first time. Nothing has ever come close to it, and that was years ago. Smash Ultimate definitely being one of the highest, most influential games in the video game industry. That looking forward to the inevitable Smash 6 on the Switch 2. At least I think it's going to be on the Switch 2. I have no idea and have little hope that it will actually be able to beat Ultimate, because the only true way to beat Ultimate is by literally taking Smash Ultimate, taking away a couple of the characters that are wasted slots on the roster that could have been someone better, literally put all of the highest, most requested characters in all of Smash history in the roster, fix all the small nitpicks I just mentioned throughout the entire video, and then add a legitimate storyline. The way to make the true best Smash game is Smash Ultimate with a little more, because Smash Ultimate is almost the most perfect Smash game, but with all the little small intricacies, problems, inconsistencies, and flaws throughout the entire game makes it not perfect. But it's so close. I would put it in the 90% range. I think probably a solid 90% perfect, which is a super high score, because if I were to rank a lot of my other favorite games, they'd be in like high 70s, low 80s. So the fact that I'm giving Smash Ultimate a 90 just proves how good this game is from my perspective. And yeah, that's really all I have to say. Smash Ultimate is just the greatest thing to have ever happened in Nintendo's history, and probably the entire video game industry as a whole. And I just really hope they don't screw up the next Smash game. So yeah, that's the entirety of this video. I guess I could have gone in a little deeper on everything in Smash Ultimate, but this video is already like over an hour long. And at that point, if I were to go deep into everything, it'd be like over 2.5 hours long, maybe even 3 hours. And that's absurd. So I didn't dive into literally everything. And that's okay. Like, I just dived into the most important things. And yeah, I'd say the Smash Ultimate's truly just the best game to have ever been made by Nintendo.